international.
Started off with a bit, now I got coin. I see where y'all going. Been poppin' since Web 1, hella hoes on Web 2. I was living a dream, now I'm on Web 3. And it is what it seems, topping the pyramid schemes, I'm telling you. I'll sell you a percentage on Nebula. Shout out to Vince, he'll set it up.
Surfing on the web and I'm shooting at 3. I've been goated when I got my G. I'm an alien boy from a different planet, yeah. So I got my drink, I'm riding in the 1920s Model T Ford. Call her Era Lord. Call me Levi, playing on the keys, boy. And I'm about to put my gloves on. If I said it, then I meant that. Yeah, I like that one, I'm about to get that. Crash that whip for the drumsticks, whiplash. I'm about to get them all. Are you with that? In a white boat, surrounded by blue. I want one, but I got a cop too. I wanna fly high in the sky, arms out wide, trying to soar from a bird's eye view. I'm on fire, Ricky, Bobby, cracking the pavement, Whitney, Bobby. I'm a Saki bomb, Hiroshima, Nagasaki. Bruce Wayne been a dog, and I keep it 101, cause I'm feeling kinda spotty. You sipping on some rock, and I'm sipping on octane. The only thing around my neck is the
Started off with a
blockchain.
bit, now I got coin. I see where y'all going. Been poppin' since Web 1, hella hoes on Web 2. I was living a dream, now I'm on Web 3. And it is what it seems, topping the pyramid schemes, I'm telling you. I'll sell you a percentage on Nebula. Shout out to Vince, he'll set it up.
NFT, Twitter, blockchain. Seeing with the ghosts and we ballin' like the Brown James. Crypto. We can make a trade, get the memo. The field's not falling for the FOMO. Listening to Coffee with Captain. You know we worldwide, they loco. I ain't never gonna stop rapping. Orlando, yeah, we working magic. We rocking Ethereum entities. I just went and caught me a half base. Man, I gotta shout out
Started
the
off with a
bit.
Now I got coin. I see where y'all going. Been poppin' since Web 1, hella hoes on Web 2. I was living a dream, now I'm on Web 3. And it is what it seems, topping the pyramid schemes, I'm telling you. I'll sell you a percentage on Nebula. Shout out to Vince, he'll set it up.
Breaking the mood to choose one, but they got knowledge to move, son. I'm shocking in shades with my brother in suits, yeah, them blues is coming. Even though it's hard to pick, eeny, mighty, mo, soda on the mix, no biting lips, it's time to go. Index number 1, no thumbs up, you gotta scroll. Looking at the ghost in studio, it's time to go. Had a helmet on by myself until I met a mask that wanted to have a face off. So had to bring my chainsaw, full tank of gas in the ride with my brakes off. I'm A1, but a different kind of steak sauce.
Welcome to Coffee with Captain, powered by ApeCoin, where we dive into all things crypto, NFTs, Web3, and cutting-edge technology. Remember, nothing here is financial advice. Early-stage tech can be exceptionally volatile and risky. So grab your coffee and join Cap and Steve for today's conversation.
Welcome to the future.
Welcome to Coffee with Captain GM. Thanks so much for joining us. If you haven't already done so, do us a favor, drop us a GM in the chat down below. Then head up top, smash that like, repost, and bookmark on today's space. We greatly appreciate it. In addition to the audio space, we've got the video space here on X, YouTube fired up. We've got Diablito RDL, Machiavelli, and Hizzy over in the YouTube streets. We've also got our abstract chat fired up as well. That's on my profile over there today on abstract. The best GMers GM in all those spots. We greatly appreciate you being here. And hitting that reminder for our carousel this week. If you haven't, we got one show left. If you haven't hit Friday's reminder, it is pinned up top. As always, I'm Captain, joined by my co-host Steve. Never any financial advice on the show. Crypto's risky, NFTs are risky. Meme coins are exceptionally risky. All markets are risky unless you just follow Orange Man's advice to say now is a good time to buy. When he says that, I get apparently buy. Hopefully he tells us when the top is in as well, Steve, so we know when to sell. And maybe we're back, maybe we're not. Who knows? It largely probably depends on what the KOL leading the White House account says today on the timeline. I kid, but in all seriousness, we're not financial advisors. We're certainly not your financial advisors. Don't follow us in any trades. Know that we likely hold tokens we talk about from time to time here on the show. And just join us for some fun, some information, and some entertainment along the way. GM Steve, how you doing, sir?
GM, yeah, I mean, apparently the buy now is not hereditary because his son said to buy ETH when it was like 2x the price and it was a great time to buy. So it's only the Orange Man, not the sons of the Orange Man, who can tell you when it is time to be buying. But no, GM to all those out there in all the different chats.
It would be great if there was actually we get word that he somehow he like had a stat with one of the sons and he set him up to do that, like knowing things were going to crash, and he told him to send that tweet when at the optimal wrong time, and then did not tell him to specifically buy yesterday. Told him to sell his ETH from the foundation. Wouldn't that be a thing?
You know what's wild is that toiling with individual family members.
Like, no seriousness, I haven't seen anyone talk about this. The president of the United States comes out and says now would be a great time to buy. Hours later, announces tariffs are paused. The day of that, or the day before, within 24 hours, the World Liberty Financial sold like $1 million in ETH, right?
Yeah, more than that.
Why? Like, what? Explain that to me. Why is no one like? How did that happen? This foundation or whatever it is on DeFi that just has been buying. All of a sudden, it decides to sell at the pico bottom within hours of the president saying now's a good time to buy. Like, I just can't reconcile that. I haven't seen anyone really dive into it. Any thoughts, or how does that happen?
I have no idea. Like,
we should just be capitulating on ETH. Is that the TLDR?
I mean, hey, they just opened up options trading for ETH. Let's all short it. I mean, it's probably the move. No, I think like the crazy part about the timeline.
The insider traders drop the ball. Like, it's just like it. I don't know. I guess we just chalk it up to this week's proof of simulation and move on. But it makes no sense to me how things transpired the way they did.
Yeah, well, I mean,
it's mainly being the biggest oddity is World Liberty Financial dumping their ETH.
Yes, and that's what I was gonna. I mean, like, the hilarious part is like you being like, I wonder if they were just in a family tussle over, like, literally, like
I'm kind of kidding, but like that probably makes more sense than what actually happened.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, example, like, the hilarious part is it's actually viable, right? I mean, that's the world we're at, where it's like, we're wearing the same hoodie again, by the way. We've done this again. So there's the it's like, I think like once a week we're going to be wearing the same hoodie. I almost went a little bit different this morning, but I went with the big comfy one because
we need someone tracking this. We had the actual statistical probability that we show up in the same hoodie, and I think we're definitely hitting the over right now since we brought it up.
I'm actually in the market for some new hoodies. But yeah, I don't know. To answer your question,
that would really wreck. I will let you answer the question. Let's you get back to it here in a second. But if you throw some new hoodies into the mix, that would be like whatever spat happened with Trump and telling his sons to sell from the World Liberty Foundation. Like, it would really spoil the betters if you started wearing some new hoodies that were not accounted for in the formula.
It's gonna happen because I've been looking around. Actually, Maria had put out a really cool hoodie that said internet on it. But when I actually went to the site, they're like champion hoodies, which I don't know if those are comfortable or not. So I don't know. But
I don't know why I'm laughing so hard at this, but imagine explaining this cold open to your friends this morning.
Yeah, the amount. Well, first, talking about like
interweaving. I keep interrupting you every other word to talk about anything from the hoodies we're wearing, if our hoodies are going to match, the betting odds on the hoodies we're wearing, to the global financial markets. Like, I don't know if there's another place on the internet quite like this.
The swings are crazy. Yeah, on one hand, we're talking about how Don Jr. probably took the last Diet Coke from the White House fridge, and Donald Trump decided to cost him millions of dollars. And on the other hand, we are wearing the same hoodies. I mean, it is kind of wacky to think that it's not out of range to say that Trump had a family spat and took it to a global scale.
Also, I wasn't going to share, but because I'm on one this morning, I'm actually sweating. I may have to shed the hoodie because I'm actually sweating. I was laughing so hard, and realized, Steve, while I've not taken any sort of tolerance break whatsoever, I have, since we've been on video, I have changed my morning habits, and now I'm just coffee only pre-show, and my coffee mug would probably gross some people out if you can see the stuff at the bottom of my coffee mug.
Is that like butter melted and congealed?
It's butter, ginger, turmeric, and some cinnamon, all and MCT oil, all in the bottom. Like, I do blend this, but this was like, you can see I finished it a while ago, so when
it comes out of my dog, I pick it up. I'm just saying, I'm polite. So
I've been just straight pre-workout, straight coffee plus straight upgraded coffee for a while, and this morning I shared with you I had extra time this morning. was back up at 4 a.m. at the gym at 5, got my workout in, got showered, and I'm like, what am I gonna do with my morning? And so I went back to some old habits. They say they die hard, and so that I'm attributing the squirrely start to the cold open this morning.
Aha. So you're it's
I didn't realize it until I spit out the water that is just sparkling water. I spit it out, and that's when I realized, oh, this is a performance enhanced show this morning.
It's cannabis with Captain, whereas I am myself on a little bit of a tolerance break. So I'm much more even keel. I was just I don't know. We're Mesh says champion hoodies are comfortable. All right, Mesh. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to trust Mesh and actually get the hoodie that Maria had been putting out because I was on the fence of doing it anyway. But yeah, man. I don't know. I think by the way, give us a like, a retweet, a comment in the room. I didn't even hit my GMs this morning. GM Dobbins, GM Machiavelli, Maria talking about your hoodie this morning. GM Funky, my favorite 80-year-old man who listens audio style. He likes the AM radio. GM Kaz, actually, I'm going to be reaching out to you, Kaz. Maria said sized up because you love the crew neck. Yeah, it's a first of all, internet on a sweatshirt is awesome. It's a good looking sweatshirt, and it's the type of thing that I'm probably going to start mixing it up with a little bit. I like it, and I want to embarrass my kids further by being a weirdo at their soccer game, but not doing it in a way that they're like, why are you wearing shirts with skulls on them? So we'll probably mix that up a little bit. GM out there, Saucier, General Wags, screenwriter Dave's always out there in the morning. Brick It All, Girl in the Verse, good seeing you out there. Joey Vowels, Law of the Saw, Kazi, Big Bear, love seeing you out there. Actually, we got to get, there's a couple people in here I see that we got to get on claw draws. I sent a DM to someone yesterday. I'm not going to call them out because they're actually oddly not in the GMs this morning. One of I would say our first GMer on a pretty regular basis. So trying to get them on as well to potentially do claw next week. I know we got Micro coming on the stream. Mesh, Diablito, General Wags, Machiavelli, all our friends out there. No Osaka this morning, which is a interesting one. He's usually up and has dipped himself into like the Seattle Bay by 5:12 in the morning. At that point, he is a true life hacker. So I appreciate that. But
I do gotta say, one of my favorite things has become, I know Mel she's busy this week, and but I gotta say, I absolutely love I love that our other early bird Big Bear checks in on her every morning that she's not here beating him to the punch on the GMs.
Yeah, Big Bear. Also, I think Big Bear, I believe, is a she. I want to double check.
I love her checking on Mel. Then
we will.
Assuming.
Big
Call
Bear,
me Anderson Cooper.
Can you? Yeah. Okay. Can we?
I'm a man of internet culture, Steve.
You are.
I get a zinger like once every 3 months. I probably got blocked by 2 or 3 people there, but them can go block me, I guess.
It's actually kind of funny because it's like yeah, like a lot of times I'm pretty good at playing the bit where you'll make a joke and I'll just like build on the joke with a yes and. That one you got me a little bit. I wasn't expecting you to flip the Anderson Cooper one this morning.
Again, performance enhanced show this morning.
A lot of Anderson Cooper haters, by the way. I like Anderson Cooper quite a bit. Very personal reasons. He's donated and helped quite a bit with my brother's charity. So, nice guy. A lot of these people are actually nice humans. They have a job, they do their job, and it is what it is. But do us a favor, give us a like, a retweet, a comment on the room. We are flying this morning, getting things going. Obviously, a busy morning, and there's a lot happening here. I mean, part of the goofiness might be the fact that we talked about bear markets, we talked about an incoming recession. Maybe not. I mean, we can get right into it if we want to, because I mean, obviously, the big news of the day is Trump decided that all tariffs. Like, I'm going to give my take on what happened here. Again, give us a like, a retweet, a comment on the room so we can kind of get everything out there. I'll give my take on what happened here.
Before we get into serious stuff, can I take a victory lap and then we can get into it?
This is going to be, you won more baseball, didn't you?
Dude, I can't make this shit up. This isn't like, look at me, look at these screenshots. Stepping into 1,000 yesterday. Actually, 1,100 because there was a few others that hit. I literally am standing on my head. I've done this for well over a decade. I've never ran this pure day after day after day after day. My biggest scores are like 900, 750, 1,000. But again, that's off a $7 ticket. I've hit 3 of those. It's like the first week of baseball, and every single day, I'm printing money on this. Like, it is unparalleled for and this is like, I've done well in my DFS career. I've never ran this hot during this. Like it's going on like now nearing a 2-week stretch. And yeah, I can't step away. Like you don't step away from the table. That's the one thing I know when you're running like this, you just embrace it. You know, there's extreme variance involved. It's not going to last forever, but the underdog gods are smiling upon me right now. So I just have to stay in their good favor. And I like stepping away from the table would be sacrilegious.
You're not, as long as you don't like overly step up your stakes, because that's the biggest mistake people make where they're like, and I know you're already in big stakes to begin with, but a lot of people say like, oh man, like I'm winning my, like, I'll give the betting analogy. Someone's like, I'm winning my $5 bets. I'm getting good. Next bet's going to be $100. Next bet's going to be $1,000. Next thing you know, they've lost all of the things they spent all that time up doing. But no, I mean, when you're hot, you continue to run hot, especially when you're a sharp. And
if you've gambled, like you probably know, like the best analogy I can get, like I played baseball growing up, and there was a summer where the ball literally looked like the size of a volleyball. Like you couldn't strike me out. I was dialed in as dialed in could get. Right now, when I'm playing these under, like it is an easy game. The ball looks like the size of a volleyball, and like I know it's not going to last. It most likely will not last forever. Most likely won't even be, throughout the duration of the season. Part of the good thing about it is it's really hard to throttle up volume so much because of the nature of the sport. Like if I was playing DFS, I could fire off 150 lineups with the click of a button. Here it's an actual draft, so it's time bound. You have to have other drafters. Like I'm getting anywhere from like 15 to 20 lineups a day into baseball, and it has become my yesterday. What am I grinding? It's become my money printer. My account is growing, and what it's also doing is it's enabling me to increase actually my NFL stakes, where I believe I have the biggest edge in this pre-draft NFL process that I'm not firing fresh fiat into. So it's kind of like in a different way. It's similar to how I built my NFT portfolio, is while taking gains, also reinvesting profits in a, I don't know, systematic's probably not the right word, but growing my stakes in a controlled manner to where like I'm not putting $1,000 in play today, to answer your question. Like I'm not doubling down everything I just won. The percentage I'm putting in play becomes smaller and smaller and smaller because I continue to win. I am firing. Like had I not been on this heater, I wouldn't have played any Masters. And I've got like, I don't know, 10, 15.
Which is fun because even if you lose, it gives you something fun, right? Like you're spending money, money for fun, and maybe you win, but like you're using your victory to support the fun. My entertainment, I will enjoy the Masters. Hopefully I have at least a sweat into the weekend, but I will enjoy the Masters far more this weekend because I should have a sweat on it because I was able to take some funny money and increase my entertainment value. Yeah. By the way, Pinstripe Gator hot in the chat this morning. I love it. Like he said, actually early on, he said Happy Masters Day, which I am wholeheartedly agree with. Masters is my favorite golf tournament by a mile. It's fun, the tradition, the sounds, I can almost like smell the azaleas from my television, the green grass. It's the greenest grass on planet Earth. Love that. And then he said, never walk away from a heater. Like what you're on right now, like a lot of people like, there's something about the universe we can't explain. I know this is going to sound kind of corny. I believe there is something about the universe we can't explain when like things like this happen, where you get on a heater or you just see, like you said, the baseball's the size of a grapefruit, all of those things. And I think that there is a sort of thing that exists like this that we can't. It's sort of like Walter Clayton Jr., which, by the way, hilarious tweet I saw recently. Someone said Walter Clayton Jr., the guy from Florida who like got the player of the tournament, said Walter Clayton Jr. is so good they make you forget his name is Walter. You don't see a lot of Walters anymore. You don't see a lot of Walters. No offense to anyone named Walter out there, but I saw that. I'm like, it's a good point. I didn't even think about it. I'm just like, Walter Clayton Jr. is a dog. But Walter Clayton Jr., like when they won the game, the Elite Eight game, they had no business winning against. I think it was Texas Tech or whoever it was. It's like he's just hitting turnaround shots. He's getting guarded. When I've been at the poker table, there's been times when you just like when I was playing poker and paying my bills with it. There were times when you just read the person across from you and you're like, they're bluffing, or I think they have it, and you lay down a good hand, and then they show, and you're like, yeah. It is a little bit wacky how sometimes the universe just positions you that way where you're like put in place to like just be correct. So I think that one's definitely a very, very real thing. I agree with you on that.
I fully understand there's no certainties in any sort of games of skill or gambling or whatever you want to call it. But there are edges. And when you find edges, exploit them.
Or if you're feeling it, go, right? Like it may be very logic based and you found an edge. It may be just a feel thing. That's okay too. You might just be like, I think tonight Francisco Lindor is going to have a good game, and then he does. And there's something that you tap into in the universe that just sometimes happens, and it's hard to explain. And like, I am a big believer. I have these conversations with people, actually really smart people who agree with me on this, which surprised me. Who I've talked to a couple of people who I consider to be very intelligent, who are like, yeah, I think there's something more to like humanity than we realize. And like, there's sometimes that there are things that we don't know as humans we tap into. And I think like that heater, that like why does the clutch gene exist in certain players and not others? You know, like, and again, I'm not like trying to do this with the LeBron Jordan thing, but it's like last night, Luka Doncic went to Dallas, and yes, he's a great player. First game back in Dallas, they give him this emotional like thank you that he's crying about. Dude goes off for 31 in the first half. Similarly, like LeBron James, like 11 points to the fourth quarter, not that good. You know, 15 points in the fourth quarter or whatever, goes off, ends up, you know, basically driving them to victory and clinching a playoff spot. And it's like something about that. It's not just timing and, you know, strategic planning. There's something about being on a heater, and when you're feeling something and you just kind of go, and there's a feel to life, and that exists across all domains. So love that you're on the heater. Love hearing about it. Rooting for you to continue to do that and support and supplement that money. But speaking of heaters, the U.S. president and the stock market are on a heater. We'll do daily market update in a little bit here. But if you missed it, I'll share it from Legendary's tweet just because I have a take on this too. Donald J. Trump yesterday, if you woke up this morning, you saw a bunch of green numbers and you don't have push notifications on your phone and you're just kind of hanging out. Here's what happened yesterday. Based on the lack of respect China has shown the world's markets, I am hereby raising the tariff charged to China by the United States of America to 125%, effective immediately. At some point, hopefully in the near future, China will realize that the days of ripping off the USA, other countries is no longer sustainable or acceptable. Conversely, and based on the fact that more than 75 countries have called countries have called the representatives of the United States, including the Department of Commerce, Treasury, and the USTR, to negotiate a solution to the subjects being discussed relative to trade barriers, tariffs, currency manipulation, and non-monetary tariffs, and that these countries have not, this is a major run-on sentence, and at my strong suggestion, retaliate in any way, shape, or form against the United States. Still a comma. We're still in the same sentence. I have authorized a 90-day pause and substantially lowered reciprocal tariffs during this period. Also, of 10%, also effective immediately. Thanks for your attention to this matter. TLDR on that incredibly long run on sentence. I can't believe that.
It had to be a voice to text. This is the other thing. Like they're firing off voice to text for things that are going to move financial markets, global financial markets, double digits.
That's hilarious. I didn't even think about that. You know, I'm a big voice to texter, although I've been increasingly using the computer lately, which has if you've noticed an improvement in my Cap sometimes responds to me and he deciphers what I say, and sometimes he responds to me. I'm like, I don't know what that was. And it's because like I'll be like going place to place, or I'm in my car going to grab a Starbucks or whatever, and I'll just like drop a line, and Cap's just like, what were you saying here? Because I do a lot of voice to text. I've increasingly been texting on my computer. I've recently introduced Telegram to my computer, which has been a game changer for me. I wasn't using it on the desktop, and now I actually respond to Telegram DMs more, which is nice. But you know, it probably was a voice to text. That's a great call. But yeah, like I think what's interesting here is we definitely have ourselves so there's a couple of theories playing out here, and I want to get yours on it, and I'll kind of give mine. But TLDR is the tariffs have been dropped on everybody except China. That means that island that only has penguins, their long national nightmare is over. But tariffs have effectively been dropped. The markets love it. He has done a 90-day pause. So I thought there was a funny tweet from Dith yesterday, Dith from Gigaverse, who said, teams, you now have 89 days to do your TGE. Good luck. But you know, the tariffs have been paused, and now we're going forward with this, and it's just China. I have a perspective on this, and you might have seen it in the war room, so like you can feel free to steal mine, and I'll just be like, hey, I think that too. Or if you had the same perspective, it's cool. But like, what do you think's going on here? Do you think this is the plan all along? Do you think this is reactionary? Do you think this leads to ultimate better deals? Like, what is your take on this as we roll into the next chapter of crazy tariff time?
So it's gonna be good because I did not see your take. Mine is I'm just gonna take them for face value. I don't know if it's true or not, but I'm gonna take it at face value. They said Bissett, I believe, came out, and I'm becoming a fan of him. I actually like him as a
Trump listens to him.
and I think he is for lack of a better phrase, I think he's the adult in the room. Like, he just doesn't seem like a wild man. Whereas I couldn't say that about everyone in this administration, and quite the opposite, in fact. And he has, like, I know there's, economists who will debate this and say this is bad and this doesn't work, but the guy has an incredible track record, better than 99.9999% of people on this app that are going to talk about global economies and tariffs and trade wars. So I'm choosing to take him at face value. He said this was the plan all along. It was a negotiating tactic, and it worked. So whether it was or not, I don't know. We'll never know. But if it was, it appears to be thus far playing out pretty well. And that's just been kind of how I've been taking this whole thing, is attempting to stay as even keel as possible and let the thing play out. Like, I think I've said before, and I still feel this way. I think there's probably very little middle ground. This probably either works tremendously well and the US remains a global power for decades to come, or it's a crash and burn and it's the beginning of the end of the US empire. Like, I think those are two realistic outcomes, maybe both extreme, but I feel that this feels like a major shift in just global powers, and it appears, knock on wood, to be playing out well so far. Subject to change. I subject to change my opinion with new information presented to us today. Unrelated. Right. So I'll let you get in there. And then I think at some point we have to talk about the intern running the White House X account.
Well, there's a lot to talk about related to that. I will tell you my general take with somebody at one point. So people know that I've talked about it on the show before. When you lead public relations at a Fortune 500 company or communications at a Fortune 500 company, you're having conversations with various C-suite executives. I've led divisions, public relations for the sort of food divisions at Nestle. I led all proactive PR at Progressive for all products. I led internal comms at Progressive. I worked with someone at one point that had some Trump-like qualities. They were a person that was very charismatic that a lot of people liked, but they had a little bit of Trump in them, in how they sort of went about their day and went about their business. So there's pros and cons to that sort of thing, but they had some levels of that to it. This person sometimes would make decisions that were beyond the scope of what they realized were the right decisions. And I would help them clean it up in a way that felt very much like they had done a good job with it. And they could say, haha, this was a plan all along. I have a feeling that's what happened here. And by that, I mean, I'm not saying this wasn't the plan all along, but I do think, based on what we heard, the reports from the White House, the reaction to the market and the reaction from the public was worse than was expected. And I don't think that's actually a hot take. I think that the way that markets dropped based on the tariffs was precipitous compared to what a lot of people thought. Treasuries were, everything was collapsing, right? Everything was looking bad. I think that it happened and they said, shit, we probably got to move. And maybe this was the plan all along, but I think they, at the very least, expedited it and they need to move it up quicker. And I think what they did here was actually quite a clever sleight of hand, which is, you said, look, we can make China the bad guy and sort of turn the world against them and say, like, China's the problem here. They're the problem for all of us, which there's an argument to be made that China is a problem for all of us. Like, that's actually not a crazy argument to make. I think what happened here is the reaction was worse than they thought. They realized that the easy move here is, just make it a big China thing and make everybody else happy. It gives everybody else a reason to say, okay, like, we've seen what can happen here. We've seen how the whole thing can fall apart. And they come out looking really clean. Whether it was a plan all along or not, I don't know. But I do think it was okay, we actually red alert. We need to do something here. I think, Bissett and everybody else who was getting in his ear said, like, look, this is worse than we think. You're feeling it. Americans are feeling it. We need to figure out what we're going to do here. And this was the plan, is like, well, why don't we make China the bad guy? And everybody else will be happy about it. And we work on that. And at the end of the day, I don't care how we got here. If we end up with better trade deals or if we end up with a better economy, I'm all happy. I guess the question becomes, and neither of us are an expert on this, so we're not going to claim to be, is does a country step in to fill the manufacturing void? Because the one elephant in the room with this whole thing is that indeed, like, our companies in America, like Apple and others, and, you know, like the NBA and all these different, they have major relationships with China. So those fundamentally are going to have to shift based on what we're seeing here in some way, shape, or form. If there's, because like us saying like it's only on China and the rest of the world are there, like markets rejoice. Who fills that gap? Because one, you know, China's, you know, obviously a large country of consumers with a lot of people. Like, again, using the NBA as an example, the way they consume the NBA in China is massive. They are a large manufacturer and we bring in their goods, so somebody else has to fill that gap. So this doesn't solve the problem, as I understand it, with my lay understanding, for all of the different groups that are who manufacture in China and who did business in China. It does solve the problems temporarily for the markets, but I do think that there is some concern of like, does somebody fill that void? Are companies still going to take a haircut because they're going to want to do business in China? Are companies going to are some of his companies and supporters still going to put pressure on Donald Trump because they're like, look, we want to make sure that you're, you know, doing business here because it's important to us. So I think the connectivity of it and where they're at, and by the way, China is a super high pain tolerance and it's a very old country and it's very prideful. So those would be my questions going into it. I think for today, we survive in advance.
Agreed. My question would be like, why wouldn't other countries step in to fill the manufacturing gap? I know it's not going to happen overnight. I know it takes time. I know that heavy machinery and warehouses and manufacturing to get built out takes time and capital. But outside of like the way it's been, and because that stuff is in China today, and I understand they also have rare earths, things that we need. Like my understanding is that's not necessarily like unduplicatable skills. It's their advantage is labor, but that also exists in India and Vietnam and many of these other markets, like who also manufacture today. Like, why wouldn't they just? It just seems like the very logical that those other trade partners ramp up manufacturing to backfill the gap.
Right. And like the answer is, and I'll go to Joe here in a second because I know he'll give an educated take on it. It's cost of labor, right? Like what it costs to do labor. I mean, it's like we had this discussion in the war room yesterday where everyone's like when everyone's like, why not bring manufacturing back here? It's like, because we pay a living wage and cost of living here.
Understood. That's very different than cost of labor in Vietnam or India.
Sure. And that's it. And that's what I'm saying. Like, is somebody going to step in and fill that gap? Because we do have the, when you look at like the cost of labor situation and the cost of living situation, it's very different in us versus, you know, China, which is why, like, again, like I respect the people who are like, look, I want people to make a living wage and buy American products. It's like, right, until you buy a $10,000 iPhone that's $300 somewhere else, and then you realize, okay, like sometimes you outsource. But it's a good question. I want to get Joe's take on this. Joe, GM,
and just to be clear, I do not expect all that manufacturing to come back here for those very reasons. But I'm just not a global labor expert, but my understanding is like average wages are actually less in Vietnam and in India, and labor cost per hour is far less in those countries. So that's just where I struggle to think why it, if you have the capital and the equipment to move and do the manufacturing, it's possible. The labor costs are lower. And I don't see, is there some competitive advantage that China has that I'm missing, because it's not labor costs compared to those other countries?
Joe, what say you, GM?
Good morning. So yesterday it wasn't that they paused global tariffs. There's still a 10% tariff across the board on everybody. There's the 25% tariff still on cars. There's a 25% tariff still on steel and aluminum. And there's still the 125% tariff on China. So if you just continue to shop and buy the stuff that normal people buy, you're going to pay somewhere between $200 and $400 more a month for that stuff. So it's not the tariffs are off. We won. We didn't win anything. And we're all just going to pay more and just not as much as we were going to pay yesterday. So
that's a good call, because he said the auto tariffs would never go down as far as his administration. So that's actually a really good distinction. Those the 25% tariffs that you mentioned there, he said, I believe when he was asked, said, never will I drop these. So I
Right.
think like
That's-
that the good point.
Yeah, plus 10% still on everything from everybody else. So Europe's going to go make a deal with China, and that's what's going to happen. And then if they do that, then we're fucked because we've lost our two largest trading partners, and are outside of Canada, who evidently we're just going to turn into a state because that's how the world works. So we would lose the two largest trading bloc, the EU and China. And you don't just like, I'll put it like this, right? Like, it's not that there's a section of China that has factories and cheap labor, and you just go build a new factory in Vietnam, and then all the supply lines just move. Like if you go to Shenzhen, or the world doesn't work that way. You don't just one day
I'm very
say,
familiar with
"We're-"
Shenzhen. Right? I mean, my last business was built entirely off parts and components coming from Shenzhen.
Sure, but
Why can't it move though? Like that's what I don't understand.
What do you mean? Like why doesn't everybody just one? The world doesn't answer to us.
Understood. But
Okay,
again,
two-
what is there an actual, other than them not wanting to, or maybe they want to do the deal with, they don't want to deal with us. Let's just, for hypothetical purposes, let's say we'll use Vietnam and India as two examples. They both have lower labor costs than China. If they want to deal with us, why couldn't they take on this manufacturing that say is in Shenzhen today? And if you're not familiar with Shenzhen, it is like
First of all, they've tried that already. It's not like they're just sitting there not being competitive in the market.
Okay, so what is it that why can't
it's
they be
not like
competitive?
wait, it's not like Vietnam or India woke up, 3 days ago and said, let's lower labor costs so we can take on China's role in the world. Like everybody knows they have lower labor costs, and yet the factories and everything stay where they are for the same reason that, like, if Kentucky called up Ohio State University and said, hey, we have land, it's bigger, it's flatter, it's more tax friendly, move your university to us, we can provide the same services as Columbus, but it'll be less money. They don't move.
I mean, the university is a weird example. It happens with businesses all the time.
No,
Businesses
it
move
doesn't
for
happen.
tax benefits
You're
within a
talking
country
about-
all the time.
You're talking about moving the entire world's factory system to another country because
I understand it's a
person
massive
has said-
Herculean effort. My question is, why can't it happen though? Like, what, other than it being there now and the way it's
Answer
always
your own
been?
question.
It's not answering
And
my
the
question.
reason I used university is literally because it would never happen. It
So
wouldn't
wait,
happen.
Joe, can I ask a can I
Not a competitive market. Like, so who opens the factories in India? The Indian government or a bunch of Indian billionaires?
But that's the question, I guess, like to push to not to push back,
I'm
but like to like play the other side. And I guess that's the question I'm like not just Cap's asking, but I would ask is that I see what you're saying, right? It's like it's not like they weren't trying before, but isn't there an argument to be made? Like, well, one, you talk about like Europe doing a deal with China. Like America is a country of consumers, so it is a good country to have access to across the board for other folks in that way, or for other countries in that way. But then in addition to that, like
But you say this a lot. That
So-
we're
so-
a country of consumers.
But
that
you
we don't manufacture stuff.
But it does. It's happening though.
because
Is my-
we are.
But in
Wait.
companies are moving though. Like I'm very familiar with the wireless space. So let's talk specifically about that. iPhone has moved a lot of their production from China to India. It's possible.
Been doing that for a while now.
And others are ramping up. Like China plus one is a very real strategy in manufacturing. So others are doing it. So to say it's never going to happen, that's a farce.
Cap, they've been moving stuff for like 5 years.
Yep.
They've been moving stuff for 5 years.
Okay.
That
I'm
feels as
not
though
saying it's going to happen overnight.
You want
I agree. It's a
them to-
Herculean
you
effort
want
that would take decades to do in its entirety. But I'm asking, like, why can't it happen? Because some of it is happening. Like it's had happened for the last 5 years, to your admission. So why couldn't more of it happen? Is my
Normal
question.
You're talking about the normal flow of businesses making decisions versus forcing the entire
So
world
stick
to
with
go
Apple.
and relocate.
Apple has made this decision to shift 10% of their iPhone production before there was 100% plus tariffs in China. Don't you think logic would say they're probably going to shift more of the production now if the tariffs stay in effect?
Possible. It's also possible they don't, because they could keep the phones that they don't sell in the US being made in China, because they'll get a better deal from the EU. Like, you don't understand, you're not taking into account that other governments in the world also have a say in things. And you're not taking
I am
into
taking that into account, though.
that global companies don't just deal with the US. And this idea that
But I am taking that into account.
No, you're really not, because you're just
now I'm doing some research. I'm pretty sure Dell and HP both have moved their assembly to India due to government incentives. Like, acknowledging there's another government playing a role there.
Problem solved. We don't need to have 125% tariffs because everybody's moved to India. So what are we even talking about? Like, we should just go back to the way the world is then.
You don't have to be condescending. I'm asking a genuine question. Like, why can't it happen more? Why can't it go from 10% to 50%?
Give me stats on 3 companies.
You said that would never happen. You use the Ohio State moving to Kentucky as the example. I just showed you that. Okay, so they're never going to move their whole university. I'll give you that. They moved they put a branch campus in Kentucky because it was cheaper. So they moved 10% of their students out of state.
Next to you. I'm going to just talk next to you like this. You're right. I'm wrong.
Why don't you ask that question though, man?
I don't think it's like that, Joe. I think like just to like
the largest consumer, therefore everybody in the world will listen to it.
I'm not saying that.
But that's not what we're saying though. That's not I don't think that's fair. I said, like, we're logically saying, like, the question that Cap and I are asking is, and we're trying to push on it, like, I would say, like, why wouldn't companies consider moving based on that? Because like if your top buyer for a product is doing something, you tend to, work with your top buyer. United States is like a quarter of the world's GDP.
Tell me how the shipping works from India.
Like, it's not. I'm not like. But this is like. But time out for a second, Joe. Time out for 1 second. Like, when we ask a question, you don't have to come back and be like, tell me how the shipping works for India. That's why we're asking the question. The point being, if there is the nuance there, that's something we're curious about.
India.
Or Vietnam. We can use Vietnam if you'd rather use that example. Samsung now ships 50% of their global output from Vietnam.
I know. Vietnam's been making Nikes for fucking 2 decades. Nobody cares. Nobody's been talking about it.
People are caring, though. The question is, why wouldn't more people move there? Because
asking a question.
Nike's done it.
Move the factory.
Samsung's done it. Why wouldn't more companies do it?
Oh my God. If you move the factories to India tomorrow, tell me how the shipping works.
How is Nike doing it? How is Samsung doing it?
Shipping works.
I'm not a global shipping expert. I've never claimed. I have no idea, other than I know Nike does it. I know Samsung does it.
How does stuff get from China to the U.S.?
I don't know.
What does it cross?
It crosses the ocean in boats. So
I'm the Pacific Ocean.
Okay. So
India.
So you're telling me that because Nike can ship shoes from Vietnam and Samsung can ship smartphones from Vietnam, other companies couldn't ship from there? Like, I don't understand where you're even going with this. It just happens today. You're acting like something doesn't exist that exists very much.
India?
What?
Where is India?
I don't understand your point.
Look at a map and tell me where India is. Where does India sit that's different from where China sits?
Why does it matter?
Because you have to get the stuff from India to stores in the U.S.
So
the shipping across the Indian Ocean through the Pacific Ocean is the point you're making. Is that what I'm tracking? Is that that raises costs?
Points going east or west. So you either have the area that goes through India and Malaysia, which is a major fucking choke point. So that's the area where you've had multiple naval ships get rammed into. You have Chinese swift boats swooping around the Navy because they say the Southeast Asian Sea is theirs. You go the other direction and you're dealing with the pirates, the Houthi pirates in the Red Sea, the pirates off the coast of Somalia, or you have to go all the way around the bottom of Africa, which then adds 4 weeks to every shipment. So now you're slashing shipments because, and you're not building all the new boats, right? Because
But that's a logical answer. Like that's a fair answer.
That's exactly what I was looking for. Why wouldn't these companies do it? You're saying, well, because of pirates and extra shipping costs. Okay, that's valid. That makes sense.
and extra shipping time.
Okay, very valid answer. That's exactly my question. Why wouldn't they move from China?
You don't let me finish. You want to like interrupt me and tell me stats on how many people are building stuff in Vietnam. I've been to Vietnam. Okay, love Vietnam. Amazing food in Vietnam. It's not prepared to take on the entire load, and they're not going to be able to do it anyways, because you know who has to be on good terms between Vietnam and us, or Vietnam and China? Vietnam and China. Okay, I have a wife literally because of wars that were fought between Vietnam and China. Otherwise, she never made it over here. Okay, so I have a very, very high level of interest in this area because I'm literally building products over there. And like, I'm trying to explain to you that it's not just a matter of relocate. There are second, third, fourth, and fifth level events that happen, and those don't just get fixed. You don't move India to a friendlier place where it's easier to get the boats here.
Why? So how did Apple do it with 10% of their production? How did they move that to China? Or why did they move that to India? If due to the pirates and the extra shipping, I'm not debating that. That's valid. Why did Apple say, okay, we're now going to produce 10% of global iPhones and we're going to grow it?
10%. Why did Apple only move 10%?
Probably because the challenges you mentioned, but there was enough of a reason to move 10%. So maybe now,
right? But why did they move 10%? I guess is the question. I'm curious about.
They just like fighting pirates.
Apple's been trying to get out of China since all the shit that happened 20 years ago with Foxconn.
Okay,
that's how long it's taken them to try to get out of China. You're talking about one of the richest companies on earth that has literally endless amounts of access to resources, governments. It can pick up the phone and talk to any person in the world, Tim Cook, Steve Jobs, whoever was in charge. And it's taken them 20 years to move 10% of iPhones, which is one product that they make, to another country that is right next to the country that they were already in. That should tell you how complicated it is. If the largest phone manufacturer, the largest, I know Samsung makes more phones, but Apple's worth more as far as how much cash they have on hand, cannot just pick up and move. Like, that should tell you how complicated it is.
We agree it's complicated and hard. No one's saying it's not, but others have done it. And your point was that no one could do it.
Just keep the tariffs in place for the next 20 years to make sure that those companies that we want to relocate and sell us shit, and then the countries that they move to that don't have access to the things that China has access to, because China's spent the last 40 years building those relationships. Where do those countries get that stuff? Because it's like all the raw ingredients are sitting there in China waiting to be used. Like, there's like, it's not just move thing. It's not clothing where you just move the fabric and the sewing machines. And that's how come you can go from China to Vietnam to Bangladesh. Like, you're talking about complicated equipment. So I'm trying to understand, like, it's not all one thing. It's not, we can make the soccer balls now.
I understand it's complicated. Yeah. I think that a Samsung smartphone and their equipment and Apple's, it's probably some of the most complicated equipment.
Can we go back to the fact that, like, you said that the tariffs were off, but they're not. And the only thing that was actually off yesterday were the reciprocal tariffs, which then still means that we're all paying more for everything. So it's not a victory. Like those are things that happen, and they're still happening. So like, you know, I understand it's a complicated topic here, but like, the tariffs are still in place. Just because yesterday's insane at midnight, everything goes up another 40 to 50% or whatever across the world, we're put on pause for 90 days, doesn't mean all the stuff that happened before isn't still in place, which it is. So like, that's happening. And if they don't come to some sort of fix for this, you're going to see China make a deal with the EU. And if China makes a deal with the EU, we're fucking Britain. Like, we got no friends anymore.
Well, this is I think this is like the point, like, of the, I mean, that's the point of the pause, right? The point of the pause, he said, so we can negotiate with the rest of the world. It's a sort of
relief. The world doesn't trust us.
I think that's fair. Like, I don't disagree. I actually said, when the tariffs were put in place, I was very despondent about it with the idea of like not only, the the
But we
the
just
efficacy
screwed
of the tariffs, but the actual trust in the world. Like, I agree with that point. We're aligned there.
we just screwed Europe on Ukraine, right? Now you're going to sit down with us and we're going to work out a trade deal.
Yeah, the world trust. I agree with that. Like, and that's
And then you
big
have
part of-
China over here, and China's not coming off as the bad guy. They're coming off as the victim. Plus, now they're doing live round shootings in Southeast Asia to show that they got a flex to them, right? We have an entire carrier group we've moved out of Indian Ocean and shifted them over into the Red Sea Gulf area, so we can start to reopen up negotiations with Iran for a deal that Trump pulled out of last time. So now we're trying to force them to the negotiation table. Plus, we're claiming back Bagram, which is like, what the hell, right? Because the equipment's not even in Bagram, and it's fucking 4 years old, and it's been sitting in the weather, and it doesn't work anyways anymore. And people are writing headlines about this like it all makes sense. And meanwhile, we're all paying $200 to $400 more a month on stuff, but it's okay because we're not paying $1,000 to $1,200 more a month on stuff. Yay, economy.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
that expectation you could be seems like a
Maybe
pretty
tomorrow.
good way to get people excited about a 10% increase by thinking them, get them to think they're going to be paying a lot more than that. Sovereign Ape in the chat says, I wish I could come up and chat, but my dad's actually a VP of supply chain at his company. He's been deep in navigating global manufacturing shifts for years. Their products are made in Shenzhen, but with rising tariffs, he spent the last 4 years transitioning production to Vietnam. It's all about long-term cost effectiveness and staying competitive, but it really shows how global politics directly shape business decisions. I think it's well said and well put, and I'm near certain that they're not the only company moving manufacturing from China to other, whatever you want to call it, emerging nations, other low labor cost nations. Like,
But that happens all the time, though, is what I'm trying to get at. A lot of companies,
and it's probably going to happen more with if these tariffs stay in place.
No, but Cap, you're not listening, okay? Companies throughout the Biden administration were moving jobs back into Mexico and Central America, okay? So like this happens all the time. Companies relocate. Companies find other vendors. Okay, styles change.
Agreed.
Needs change, right? Local governments, right?
Agreed. That's why I think it's weird to use the university example, because this stuff happens all the time.
Think about it like this, right? Think about it like this, okay? You have a global bubble right now of CRE that's about to pop. Okay.
Yep.
You have American banks that are handing out CRE to anybody because they can't fucking sell it. Okay. The US car market is on the verge of utter collapse. This is all before the economy shit started. This was under decent economy times. Okay. So now we're going to start a trade war. Okay. You have the largest car lenders who have all slashed subprime. They won't lend to subprime anymore. Well, that kills your used car lots, because the people who buy used cars are generally the subprime borrowers. But if Carvana, JP, B of A are no longer lending to subprime buyers, what happens? Plus, you have a surplus of new cars that are sitting on lot, okay, that haven't been able to be sold. Some of them are sitting there for 900 days. Okay, so if I'm coming in to buy a new car today, am I buying the 2-year-old brand new 2023, or am I buying the 2025? Well, now at a 25% tariff on a bunch of American cars because they're made partially in Canada or Mexico, then you have certain Japanese cars, like you can get a Tacoma that's made in the US, but the Tundra is made in Mexico, or vice versa, right? You can get a Genesis GV80 that's made in South Korea, but the GV70 is made in Alabama, okay? So like, you have complete now uncertainty in the car lending, car buying, car selling sector at the very moment that dealers are rejecting 2025s because they couldn't sell 2024s.
Yep.
What happens to all the dealerships, all the dealership loans, all the land that they're paying on if the CRE bubble pops? Right? B of A is handing out CRE to anybody.
Right. But serious question. The CRE bubble didn't start when the tariff war began. That's been bubbling up.
The CRE bubble has been happening since COVID.
Yes.
Because everybody went work from home.
Exactly.
The point that I'm saying is that we have a bubble here.
Okay? I agree. Now, I wholeheartedly agree.
Now we have a hedge fund. Now we have a hedge fund basis trading bubble because the hedge funds are so over leveraged on U.S. Treasuries that they're about to pop. How many crises can we deal with at one time and go get a good deal from China, Europe, or whoever the hell we're trying to get to, while the companies that are supposed to be selling stuff to us are looking at the map and saying, where's my next customer? These people all just became poorer.
And that's I think is a salient that I think is a salient point as far as like if we are in a situation where we are not spending in that way. So I think this is the connectivity, and I think the worthwhile discussion is there's I want to like distill down like the points here because I know a lot's been said. I think on one end, the question at the top was why not move the manufacturing, and it has happened previously and it's not they have been trying to, but now there is extra incentivized motivation. Why would people do a deal with us? Well, the answer is, again, we're a quarter of the world's GDP. Nobody else is close. China's kind of close, but not quite there. Europe's a little bit lower. And then there's just the rest of the world. However, one, I think the sort of global tensions is a very fair point. Vietnam needing to maintain a relationship with China because we could end up with ourselves in a hot war over manufacturing if we want to have a strategic advantage. This happens all the time where we end up being in wars because I'm not going to get into like the global politics of it, but there are strategic points in Europe, Asia, and around the world that we want to maintain, and we do maintain because of the strategic nature of them, right? And so, like the Vietnam thing, I think is a fair point as far as their relationship they're maintaining. So I think one, like there's the reason why they would do the deals and move manufacturing. Two, there is the reason why they wouldn't want to take on that manufacturing if you piss off China and they're flexing their power. But then three would be the point that you made, which is if we end up through bad economic policy putting ourselves outside of it, our biggest chip on the table, in my opinion, is that we buy a bunch of shit. And if we can no longer buy a bunch of shit, well, then other countries the EU is more incentivized to do a deal with China based on that. And I think those three logical points kind of put together.
Just really quick though, because I respect the argument, but when we have a lot of money, we have a ton of money. Okay. I'll use this argument with anybody. We have a ton of money, right? For the 320 million of us, we produce 11 trillion more than China, which is 4 times larger than us by people. We have a ton of money, right? We also have a massive disparity in who has the money. So 70% of our money is possessed by 0.5% of the population. And no matter how many boats and hoes they buy, they ain't buying more shit from Walmart. Okay. So yeah, we have a ton of money, but we also have hyper wealth, which possess the majority of the money. So the average American doesn't have that much money. That's how come the average American is now taking out 7-year car loans, because the average car loan is, right? The debt to earnings ratio is off the scale, right? So like we have a lot of money, but if you're an economist who's advising your trade council, who's advising your president, premier, chancellor, or whomever, what you're saying is, unless we can get those 2,000 people that hold 70% of their money to buy all of our shit, we country that's got a bunch of fucking people where the money's more spread. And that's not to say that there isn't hyper wealth throughout Europe and there isn't hyper wealth throughout China. There is no middle class in China. You either have money or you're in the
or you're producing stuff for us.
Yeah. So like the point that I'm trying, and let me tell you this right now, okay? Because like I don't come up here and have these conversations because I'm on a whim and I'm reading fucking Twitter, right? I sat down 2 days ago with people in the military to ask them questions. I sat down 2 days ago with investment bankers and traders to ask them questions because I got to make decisions on shit that I sell to hyper wealthy people. But I'm also asking questions of the tea shop and the herbal shop that I have in my area. Why? Because I know what business they're actually in. And they're seeing an influx of capital coming through China through their mere banking system. So the Chinese wealth is fucking scared to shit right now about what's happening. And their flight of capital is coming back into the US. And right now they're paying fucking 35% on the dollar to make that work. But that's just a lark on their part because they don't know what's going to happen either. So it's like the market's ticked up a bit because we put a pause on a thing that didn't have to happen. That doesn't mean that the people who are paying $200 to $400 a month have $200 to $400 a month extra to pay, and they're not going to have it. And if they lose their entitlements, and if they lose access to all the other services that they didn't realize that they were depending on, but now don't exist anymore because Doge went and slashed them and got rid of the departments, they don't have any extra money because they were already living paycheck to paycheck. So I'm done talking.
No, I agree. And that's like, by the way, I don't think anyone's doubting your credibility. I was actually, like I said, like, and I mean, if you can't tell, like, I'm trying to distill this in a understandable way for everybody who goes, because I think everybody's listening, because I think there's a lot there. And I think it's good to educate everybody across the board, which is, the added point there where I say, hey, like, we buy a lot of stuff. The point that you made there is actually really interesting, where it's like the idea of, and I can't think of a great example, and I should, but companies that sell luxury items oftentimes will then sell items to consumers on a very affordable basis. And those affordable items will do their main business, and the luxury items will be items that they have on the back end, right? Where it's, I can't think of a good example just because my brain is foggy this morning. But the point being, what you're saying is like the Walmart buyers and the onesies and twosies, those are going to be where that manufacturing money comes towards. That's going to be what's going to ultimately drive that economy. When you talk about, we may have a top 10 GB, cash per capita, or I don't know what the number is. We might even be top 5. We might be number 1. I don't know. I haven't looked. Probably someone like fucking Luxembourg or someone like that, or like,
it's
like
one of the
Iceland or Denmark,
Norway.
Yeah.
You can always just assume Norway's up there because their sovereign wealth fund is amazing. They own 9% of all the stock in the world. It's going to then be Liechtenstein or Luxembourg. But, we're always up there, as a nation.
It's like us and the Scandinavians looking around being like, they don't even know I'm a U.S. and we're drinking a Bud Light with a trucker hat on. They're like, everybody knows that in that like party gift. But no, so like the idea that so again, I just want to recap and then I'll go to hands because I think this is a valuable conversation. This is what I want to have. It's like, hey, if we do this, why wouldn't other countries fill the gap? Like the argument for is that it's an unprecedented time. We buy a lot of shit. The opportunity's there, so they're more motivated to do so. The argument against, which I think is, obviously like giving the more nuance to the conversation, is one, more time consuming, more expensive. The actual materials issue is there, so it's not accounting for those particular issues. It doesn't account for the actual global issues that like a Vietnam or a India are going to run into potentially with their land-bound or not land-bound or close sort of countries that they are, currently in good relations with. So that's going to be there. The idea that you would do the deal with us for consumers is sort of debunked by, or at least pushed back on by the fact that, yes, but we also have a lot of wealth dispersed to the highest percentage, which is absolutely true. So therefore, those manufacturing opportunities exist in the smaller groups. So if you're raising, the idea there, if I'm understanding correctly, is that if you're raising sort of like, the average sort of Jimmy and Joe who, is in, Shreveport, Louisiana, going to Walmart, if you raise their prices by $10, $15, that is a massive hit for them. So that's that doesn't get solved into that issue as well. And obviously there's other macroeconomic as well as local issues we're having as well. And on top of that, if we do end up going to a recession or there's less money to spend, well, that certainly doesn't help our case to try to negotiate that PowerPoint. So I think all of those points make a lot of sense as to why this doesn't work or why this wouldn't be a positive move forward. And by the way, like, I know we talked about it, like, I agreed with you on the fact of the tariffs in the first place. So I think like at a very standardized point, like I'm with you on that.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that it's noted that like all the tariffs around the world didn't just pause. Just yesterday's extra tariffs paused. That's what's important to note. And you have to understand what the plan is. And if you're running a global company, you're making decisions years in advance, not days and weeks in advance. And you can't just pick up and move everything someplace else, because if you do that, that's not how the world works. These aren't just
Completely understand. No one said
Trying to
that. No one said
factor.
people are just picking up and moving. I said it would be a decade-long process. I do want to get Chris in here,
I'll
who's
give you an
been super
example,
patient. We've
just
got a few
really
other.
quick.
We've got a few other.
Just really quick, because like literally my wife is in manufacturing, fashion design, and production. Okay. So her company owns half the company that they work with in China. Okay.
Very
They
common.
they have apartments. They have an entire town built around the factory. Okay. Now to move all that, not just to retrain, because these are skilled people. Okay, who are doing this work. This isn't just some schlub off the street, right? There's just as skilled as an American who would be doing the work someplace else. You
In some
have to
cases, more
then-
skill.
It's all skill, but now you have to redirect the Italian leathers, the Japanese silks, okay, the embossing, the Austrian beading company, plus you have to get all those machines, and then you have to retrain an entire populace to be able to have that skill. And that's assuming you have the capital in place to just break all your contracts with your Chinese, half Chinese company and move to a completely different city in a completely different continent, and then figure out the supply chain to get that stuff to you. And what does that look like on turnaround, right? So that's all.
Yep. Very difficult. I agree. It's all very difficult. My point was other companies have been doing this process for years, and I think this accelerates the process. Even if tomorrow tariffs go away completely, I think some of these very large companies will follow the path of Samsung, Apple, Nike, and start manufacturing. Maybe it's just more China plus one. Maybe some eliminate the China. These large companies, to your point, these are decade-long decisions. It's a very complex, very lengthy process that's not just made on a whim. And we've heard from several people in the chat who this is also what they do for a living. And they've also been having these conversations or actively moving some or all of their manufacturing out of China for the last 4 to 10 years. My whole point was we're going to see more of that due to this tariff war. Even if it goes away, people aren't going to want all their eggs in one Chinese basket. I understand it's very difficult. It's a huge undertaking, not just picking things up and moving, or not just saying we're going to stop manufacturing, we're going to manufacture. I get everything you just said. It doesn't change the fact that other companies have done exactly that. And I think more now will at least consider moving their manufacturing due to this trade war. But I do want to get Kristen here, who's been super patient. I appreciate you're obviously very intelligent. You're dialed in. You get this stuff. The university analogy is a crazy one because companies have done exactly that. They have moved from China. Others in the future will move from China. Just to act like it's not going to happen or it's never happened, I think that's disingenuous. But everything else, like I agree with you. It is very difficult. It's going to take many, many years, but other companies have already done it. More will likely do it. Maybe not. Maybe we don't know. Not saying tariffs are good. I'm saying because of this, more companies are likely to follow the path of Apple and Samsung.
Well, which the question then becomes, because I think to your point, like I think the question then becomes like, this obviously based on, this sort of information, what we see in the chat, what we hear from Joe is the question is like, is there then an incentivization plan from the US government for people to do so, right? Because that would be the other thing where it's like, you don't have the capital, the ability, you would need to have an incentivization to say you are going to do this beyond the threat. It's like, if I tell my kids, like there's 2 ways to get my kids to clean up I know it's a bad analogy, but it's like 2 ways to get my kids to clean up the house. I could tell them that they're going to lose screens, or I could tell them that they're, going to get $1 for doing so. Both have different effects and oftentimes, again, I know this is way oversimplifying, but I'm just trying to like make it as understandable as possible. It's like the point being there would have to be an incentivization where it's like, if my kids have a checklist and if they complete it, they get $20 each week. And if they don't complete it, then they get punished. Both of those things are in place, both positive and negative incentive structures. So I do think that there is like the point Joe has made is very salient. And I think the points that the chat are making are very salient, but I also think that there is a point to say this can't be the only lever you're pulling because of all of the complexities from a global economic perspective, from a global sort of potential for, war perspective or issues that like, countries that are closer to China. Like, I think that point really resonates with me because like us getting into a hot war over a strategic trade partner is a very real thing that has happened many, many times. And that part becomes even like that part of all the things discussed. The logistics make sense, but there's always ways to get around money. Like the threat of violence or the threat of who do you want to be closer with because they can crush you, and also obviously the monetary value of being connected to China. While we are 25% of the world's economy, they're still probably like, I don't know, at least 15% of the world's economy too. So I think both ends of it are really helpful. And I agree with you. Like, I think it's good to, like, that's why I want to get, I mean, to me, that's why I say I'm not an expert. I want to get educated on it, on what the nuances of it, and hearing somebody who's doing it is helpful. But
there certainly has to be more. It can't just be the only thing to the plan or the process, but
can't be.
Again, I'll name Apple, Samsung. You can call Nike, who's been doing it for years. They did it without any incentives, without a single one. They just chose to do China plus one strategy because they didn't want to have so much riding on one nation state. And it just, to me, that's the most logical and rational thing, that regardless of how the tariffs play out, I don't think there's a future where more companies don't consider either China plus one or moving out of China entirely for just peace of mind. The China plus one strategy for redundancy, if nothing else. I do not see a path forward where manufacturing is not ramped up significantly in these other low labor cost markets that also have started this manufacturing, boom. It's like this, all the Samsung, them shipping 50% of their devices out of Vietnam. Nike's been in Vietnam forever. Apple moving 10% of their iPhone production to India. That happened before all this tariff war. I just like, now that this is one other thing for these big businesses to consider in this very complex global trade world, I can't imagine that any of them that have manufacturing in China are at least talking about, hey, should we be looking at a China plus one strategy? I would be shocked if that's not at least a conversation. They may not do it, but I think it's highly likely we see more go this path going forward.
Yeah, let's get Chris in here. I know Chris has a perspective that'll be, I think, also super. I think a potentially unique perspective to bring to the table. Chris,
also, before we get Chris in here, I just have to say, I took a victory lap earlier. It was probably 10 years ago. This is a 10-year delayed victory lap. I spun off a separate brand when I was running Verizon stores, a phone repair brand, and early on, because there was no trusted retail repair stores. There was no trusted retail repair chain. There was no trusted supply chain in the aftermarket repair of Samsung and Apple. I started doing all because there was none. So I was importing directly from Shenzhen. I was up till 3 a.m. warehousing stuff in my little office in Southern Indiana and shipping it out to repair shops throughout the US. Did that for maybe maybe about a year, 18 months. And then I partnered with another supply. I could have went the retail route, or I could have went the supply chain route. And I partnered with the supply chain route, and I went the retail route, and we grew the number one franchise, the largest retail repair chain in the US. And it played out well. And now I've exited. I'm out of that business. Had I went the supply chain route, however, and went down that fork in the road, not only am I probably not out of the business yet, because I just knowing how those relationships went forward, I probably am literally in the midst of my worst nightmare ever right now. I have all the empathy in the world for my former counterparts that are now, like, not even exaggerating, 99.9% of the aftermarket parts that go into phones now are getting a lot of Apple and Samsung OEM parts in these devices, but most of the repairs, if it's not an insurance game, are done with aftermarket parts. They are getting, all those come from Shenzhen. Like, I say 99% is probably, it would probably be more accurate to say 100% of those aftermarket parts originate in Shenzhen. And I don't even want to think, it was hard in a thing I didn't enjoy previously. I can't even imagine what they're going through now. So while I had to share that because I don't want it to seem I'm not empathetic for anyone that's getting crushed by these China tariffs. I get it's a really big deal. I get they're not over. I get they didn't all get paused. And I was adjacent to that. I was very close to some people who are going through extreme pain and having to probably either, like, their conversations, like, do we need to reinvent our business? Do we close up shop? Like, they have, their future is very uncertain. And I know that it's more than just the aftermarket cell phone or parts that are in that. So with that, Chris, get in here. GM, appreciate your patience.
GM, I'd start off with that, obviously.
Ooh, Chris, you're rugging. I hate that Chris waited this long and he's rugging a little bit.
Yeah, no, I think we're good.
We got you back.
All right, we're back.
Okay. First thing I did is unmute myself, and my headphones decided to disconnect. I'd start with that. We all see the news and we see the information coming out, and there's already been a couple of instances of information being spoofed, maybe not being entirely truthful, being unverified before it gets put out there. And so we see a lot of these accounts do that. Your international relations lesson for the day, going back to Dime again, and some of the companies that we're talking about, is these companies have to go to these nations' governments, and they're negotiating deals as well for location, for access to workforce, for resources like water and electricity, depending on their manufacturing process, and all sorts of other things, port access and transportation methods and all of the things, because, as several of you were talking about earlier, it's not just a little bit, it's not one or two, it's 1 or 2 million pieces, 1 or 2 million products. And when you start to talk about especially highly technical things like electronics and whatever, well, not only are those very resource intensive from a production standpoint and from a raw goods to be able to turn into that product, or semi raw goods produced somewhere else, the silks and the leathers and the chips and whatever, but it is also about access to and the capability of the local workforce. So when you talk about the Association of Southeast Nations, which is basically, if you think about the Vietnam, Brunei, Myanmar, Indonesia, all of the places, outside of India and China, they are also kind of like the EU. They're also advocating on behalf of their members. They have more leverage as a collective, just like EU has more leverage as a collective than the individual European states that are their members. And so they're also negotiating. And I read this morning that they released a statement about the tariffs, specifically about them going on and off, that President Trump did yesterday, and the disruption to their workforce, to their member states, to their economies. And so it will break the trust, like I think was mentioned earlier, about nation states with each other, right? So that goes from an information level and then starts to go down an economic and diplomatic level, because you have these communications, nobody can keep up. I don't know that anybody on this chat could say, if we gave you a test and say, what are the tariffs based on your understanding of the news? What are the tariffs in these 10 countries today from the United States? Nobody would come up with the same answer, because we all get different sources of information. And I think even senior folks in the government wouldn't necessarily know.
I was going to say, I bet a lot of government people would have the same answer where they would get it wrong.
You're going to have a senior,
maybe the president.
Right. I mean, because he's putting out tweets, right? He's going to go back and check his Twitter and say, okay, what did I do again? Oh yeah, right. Okay. Somebody's going to tell him. The point being is, now you have the Secretary of State and all of his diplomats are trying to create leverage or gain leverage amongst all of these nations. One with they're treating China in a different way than they're treating the ASEAN nations. Then they're creating the Middle East. Then they're doing Europe, right? If we're going to talk about kind of big swaths, then you have really South and Central America. You have our neighbors, our North American neighbors, and then you have Africa. If you think about it in big swaths, then also they're economically, these tariffs are playing economic whipsaw, because we talked about moving, Cap, you talked a lot about moving production. They would love to do that, but there's a limited excess capacity of skilled labor to do the thing that you need to do tomorrow. If you were manufacturing clothing and you were doing it in China, and now the price of your product has doubled or tripled or whatever the case is, you try to shift somewhere else and you want to go to Vietnam, you might be able to in 6 months.
I think this is the biggest challenge, is the skilled labor component. Labor costs are going to be lower. And someone brought up productivity and skilled labor previously. Like, for some, it would be an easier move than others. But I think more so than the factories and the heavy machinery and the actual manufacturing facilities, it's finding the skilled labor in some industries could be extremely challenging.
Right. And getting the raw product there, and getting the components, and getting the time on the floor, because they don't have empty factories, just like they don't have skilled labor that's just laying around. And China is going to compete for that because all of their industry is centralized. All of it is state owned and state ran. So they gain a lot of efficiency by doing that, but they also kill a lot of competition. And so they're going to do things to try and prevent companies from leaving, through contracts, through contract enforcement, through diplomatic means, to be able to keep those businesses somewhat held hostage, again, to provide diplomatic and economic pressure on the United States. China is going to play the victim here, and they're going to go around to all of those other countries and say, see, you can't trust the United States because they're whipsawing these tariffs back and forth. You should do business with us instead, and you should support us in call the United States, call the president and say, you need to stop doing this to China because it is also affecting us. China has demonstrated this over and over and over, that they will do this diplomatically, and they will intimidate and economically punish other countries for working with the United States, and force those nations into a choice. Do I want to be on China's good side? Do I want to be on the US's good side? Or do I just try to not be on anybody's good side and go it alone? And now India is doing the same thing with a growing labor force and a growing capacity. They just have a geography problem. Now they have to sail through the South China Sea and the Straits of Malacca, and right past China, who they're competing with, and they have a growing labor force to do that. Or they have to sail a really long ways through dangerous waters, as Joe is talking about.
So can I ask you the same question? Like, I acknowledge all that. I'm not saying that's not valid. Why still, why would Apple move 10% of their iPhone production to India? Because of everything you just said. Help me understand why they would still make that decision.
They have to diversify because they can't trust the norms of the system. They can't just be comfortable and say, yep, everything's going to be good. The economic world order is going to be fine. And so we don't have to worry about crisis, and we don't have to worry about chaos, and we don't have to worry about diversification. So there
seems like a bad idea to have all your trading partners in one basket for any organization,
for anybody, anywhere, and including these global organizations, right? But they're dealing with pretty thin margins, increasing shipping costs, increasing shipping risk, increasing resource and component risk, and a dwindling, depending on where you're at in that part of the world, a dwindling or decreasing labor market or labor force that wants to do it, right? China is well known that their population is starting to age very rapidly because of the one child in China policy that has actually peaked, and they're going to start going the other side very rapidly. When they start that decline and India passes them from a population standpoint, that is going to completely rewrite how Asia works, and especially in that realm, with all of the resource fights, with all of the China, the first island chain and second island chain, with the deal with Taiwan, and then you have a military component to that, where China is going to, their goal is 2027. Xi has come out and said that publicly, and they're going to try and force Taiwan into it. That is a huge also source of manufacturing, and would have a massive impact on these complex electronics and other things that they produce for the United States. I mean, I'm looking at a fountain pen right now that I got as a gift. It says Taiwan on it. Where do you think that's going to come from? They'll produce it at a greater point, but they also have a lot more control if you're talking about China. In the military part, you're seeing the United States shift to try and force an adversary nation in Iran through posturing, moving 2 carrier strike groups, moving a lot of really high level capabilities in missile defense and stealth bomber attack in position to try and force them back to the table. So the U.S. is spread really thin trying to do this across all of those levers of power. And at some point they're going to have some self-inflicted wounds, if I would argue that they have already, because they're trying to do things so fast, and we're getting information by tweet instead of coordinated policy. We're doing things on signal. Like, come on, really? Is that how we want to do this? So I just say all of those things to say, like, this is extremely complex, and the speed at which it moves on Twitter or in the news is way faster than any company is going to be willing to pivot, because they're going to throw good money after bad to be able to try and shift to produce, because those tariffs, just like they showed up in a day, they can be gone in a day, and they'll weather that couple of weeks. That's, I said in the war room, like, talk to me in a couple of months when everybody is dug in and where these tariffs are going to be, and then you'll see prices, and then you'll see, goods flow be an issue. I mean, they supposedly they flew 4 planes worth of iPhones into the United States like the day before those tariffs took place, just to be able to have some stockage in the United States. So I'll pause there because I lectured probably more than I needed to.
No, I appreciate it. Let's go to Mackie on this, because I actually have a thought on how this is all going to end anyway, and we can maybe kind of button it on.
We also just got some breaking news. Payne pointed out the EU just paused tariffs for 90 days, or announced they're pausing tariffs for 90 days on goods and services, and agrees to negotiate a deal with the US. So following the 90-day pause yesterday, EU matched it today.
This is the economic de-escalation, right? That they're trying to bring back from the edge, and the United States is also going to put that pressure on China, where if they can get all of these other countries and conglomerates and economic forums that need to, that side with the US and are on the US's side, they can also put pressure on China, because they're feeling the same effects that the United States feels in uneven trade deals and whatever, and that's how China is supporting itself, by having that excess.
Let's go to Mackie on this, and then, like I said, I was actually waiting for that to be a verified source. I saw that it was Watcher Guru, but I didn't see it verified on official sources yet, so I'm keeping an eye out on that. I know we had some pump fakes the other day, which we'll probably talk about a little bit in the last half hour. Did not have us going hour and a half on tariffs this morning.
It's on CNN, unless it's I don't know. I can't believe anything I see on
No,
this
I was
app.
on The Guardian this morning, so it's good.
Got it. I always want to double check, because we've had a couple of head fakes on some things. We got the Hezzy Hay on a few of them. So I just want to make sure that we are, because like we had one the other day, and then when we looked it up, it wasn't true. I think we had the Walter Bloomberg one live the other day, which was a fun one. Although Walter Bloomberg turned out to be right. He just, he got the information early. Mackie, go ahead and get in here, GM. I cannot hear Mackie.
I can't either.
Same.
Yeah,
I can hear Joe. Mackie, we cannot hear you. Nobody can hear you, so maybe do a lap and get through. I don't know. I think this is all going to end, to be honest. Like, I again, this is my general. I think we're going to end up probably similar place that we were at the beginning of all this, maybe slightly better. It'll be much ado about nothing, and we're going to end up striking deals, because it's going to be too beneficial for us not to get pushed out as a world power. It's going to be too beneficial for China not to have us. Like, China wants our money, even though I know they can do it without us and strike a deal with the EU. We want China's manufacturing, even though I know we can try to say it's going to be elsewhere. My general feeling is that we're probably going to end with this being not too far off from where we are now, and it's just a bunch of, a bunch of shenanigans to get back to where we generally were. Maybe, I don't know. Like, I think that that's how a lot of this jousting tends to be, and maybe there's incremental victories that'll be very well worth it on either side, or concessions. But, Mac, you go ahead and get in here.
Oh, can you hear me now, boys?
we got you.
You're good.
Beautiful, beautiful. Long story short, I did a 2 or 3 year stint in international logistics, and that was the first time I ever had a panic attack. And thinking about it now today makes me feel like having a panic attack again. But
Same.
for those,
someone asked if I'm ready to start a global supply chain logistics, and I want nothing to do with that. Like, they like ask like the one job. There's probably no amount of money that you could pay me to take. It would be that. Like, I have no interest. No interest.
That you wanted to get out of it. That you chose.
I had
the retail versus supply chain.
Dude, it was
oh my God.
It was the worst thing I ever did when I was building a business that was scaling and successful, and I was like, it was like gun to my head type. It is, and maybe talking aftermarket parts and defect rates is a whole nother can of worms I don't even want to open. But yeah, the worst jobs in the world. This is not what most people picture. They think like the Mike Rao guy or whoever does that reality show.
Oh, dirty jobs.
Dirty jobs. This would be the dirtiest job in the world. So yeah, I do not want that heat whatsoever. Back to you, Mackie.
Yeah, so I'm glad that I'm not in that business anymore. I'm majorly glad. But the world is an assembly line, right? And we've put different countries in different spots on the assembly line. They've learned to be specialized in these things. And exactly what Chris said, like the way that we're operating right now via tweet and second guessing and head pump fakes on news is just wild. It's scary, confusing, disheartening, in my opinion, but it is keeping people on their toes. And I know that that might, as Steve just said, get us a little bit of an edge as a country. But like this trick of crying wolf, of saying one thing and then doing another, like Trump's been doing this since the beginning of, well, he's been doing it since his last term, but yeah, the second term when he's trying to push different people in through congressional hearings to get them into positions, like you say, here's a really bad guy. Okay, here's a less bad thing. This is the same thing. We had really bad tariffs 3 days ago. Now we have less bad tariffs and we accept them happily. It's just, I don't know. The crying wolf thing isn't going to last as a tactic. Trust has eroded, as we've discussed, across the world. It was bad before. Now it's even worse. And trust in the U.S., trust between trade partners too. So yeah, I don't see why violence isn't on the table at some point. So yeah, it's just very scary and struggling financially. Like I know I'm not the only one. Like it's worrisome. It makes you wonder like what you have to do to survive. I'm standing outside of, actually this is pretty funny, I'm standing outside of one of the largest family investment groups, like they're building right now. I just happen to walk by this all the time. It's the DeVos family building. And it's like, you wonder what it takes to get on the inside of this kind of stuff sometimes. I'm literally like looking at it right now. This is so funny.
Yeah, deeply feeling and thinking about anyone who's going through it right now from an individual level. Like I'm, not sure where my next opportunity is going to come from, to those that are leading global logistic companies and heads of supply chains worldwide. I can't imagine. I don't know if like cry wolf is the analogy I would use. Certainly a tactic, and the stopping and starting, the pausing, the on and off, the lack of clear communications, like it's going to lead those individuals I just listed off to early retirement. Like that's just not a fun, like about as stressful of a world as you could imagine. And you're talking about businesses that some operate on lean margins that are seeing them, like I can't even imagine being in those meetings. Like it's truly insane to think about how you would even begin to run a global business that's running on lean margins in this environment where something you bought yesterday now costs more than 2x today. It's not feasible. Like for most things, it's just simply not feasible. It's like they're all in survive and advance mode right now. And I tend to agree with Steve. I think we end up, ultimately, this probably shakes out. Some sort of deal gets done. I don't know, Steve. I think there's probably two outcomes. One, everyone gets deals done and it's mostly back to normal, with some of these businesses taking the approach of diversifying a little bit so that they don't ever have to go through this again to this extreme. Or it becomes the outcome where you choose teams. You're either trading with China or you're trading with the US.
Not good.
And that is not good. I fear a concerning outcome, because if that becomes the global, how trade is done globally, I feel like we're just one bad month away from a world war. Like I feel we're a bad month, a bad quarter away from, escalating violence, and that actually being on the table. And that's nothing I want to think about at this point in my life. I hope that is not the outcome. I hope it's something where everyone is equally unhappy but happy enough to move forward back to close to the way it was, but with, like you said, maybe slightly better terms, maybe business thinking about diversification on their manufacturing a little bit. But I don't know as if pick your global power is the best outcome, but I think it's certainly, I would guess if you'd had to choose two outcomes, I think it's probably one of the two outcomes.
Yeah, the scary part to me is like, and like the part that frustrates me about the whole thing, and I kind of said this when we had the conversation, and like to use like a very, like niche example, but behind me, there's 3 Curtis figures from Super Plastic, and they said, look, we're shutting our doors for now based on the tariff stuff. And I think it was based on the uncertainty of the cost to make like those sort of small, batch goods of like high quality vinyls. And like once the prices go up and they don't have huge margins, they're like, we can't swing it anymore. And I think the part that like frustrates me, I'll go back to you in a second, Joe, but I think the part that frustrates me here is like, I I never like, I know this is like how the world works. And so this is me being too much of an empath and people make fun of me for it. But it's like, I get you need to crack eggs to make an omelet. One, I want to know what omelet you're making. So like, it would be good to know the real true end game and what is going to be the outcome that's going to ultimately be positive here. So there's an outcome. Like, I don't like, I actually like running now a little more. I don't like running on the treadmill. I like running outside. So I'm waiting for it to warm up. But like, I don't like running on the treadmill, but I know what the end result is. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to have better cardiovascular health. I'm going to like, it's a means to an end and it's not as fun, right? When you eat your vegetables, you get healthier. I feel like we just have this like amorphous goal of like, we're going to make America great again. And like, I just don't feel like the stated goals have been as strong that a small business owner can say, great, I'm getting screwed over by this, but but at least we're working towards this. And I think that's what you run into a little bit. And yeah, I think it's probably one of those two outcomes, which I don't love. And we talked about it. It's sort of like a self-imposed thing that we're doing to ourselves. But I don't know. And to Becky's point about uncertainty, I mean, even myself, I'm like, okay, like, is this going to affect our ability to get sponsorships on the show? Is this going to affect my ability to pay my bills? And when I think of it in 3, 6, if it's an 18-month recession that we go into, which I think is the average time of a recession, I'm not positive. Don't quote me on that. It's like, cool. Okay. Like, do I need to find a stable income of some sort? So I think everybody's feeling that effect. And I think it's important to understand and be empathetic to that, to Mackey's point. Joe, go ahead and get back in here.
Yeah, the goal's just to put us into a recession. And
I've heard this. Why? And just, kind of like a brief thought on that. Like, why?
Recessions used to happen like every 3 to 4 years. And then it's only been say 30 years that we've spread them out. And if you don't count,
because we manipulate the monetary system, right? Is that fair to say, or is it not? Would that be inaccurate?
It's a bit of both. Like, we went the entire period from post World War, not even post World War, from basically FDR putting in banking regulations all the way into the 70 oil crisis without having a recession. That's considered like the boom time. And that's how come you see most of our representatives and our elected officials who are old harken back to that time. Because that, like you think about the best sex you have, you think about the best economy you have. And they were, all in their 30s and probably still had natural erections. So they're always thinking back to a time that's never going to exist anymore, because that was when we were inventing the middle class. So like, they want to, the markets have been soaring. Now the top tier of money has moved into stables, basically. And now you can crush the economy, and then they'll come back in and buy everything at the bottom and then write it back up. And that's just the way the world works. Which is how come it's funny when Clemente and he's just trying to get engagement, and is like, Warren Buffett is sad he didn't buy the dip. And it's like, nah, bro, that guy's got $400 billion. He's doing all right. So basically they want a recession. China's still trying to recover from its economic situation because it's been in a really bad place. Its CRE market is exploding, which has trickled all the way through because of how their banking system works. You see a flight from capital from China with somewhere around $90 billion leaving per quarter to either Europe or the US through, underground banking. And so they lean on them, and they hope that we go into recession, which makes everybody who has wealth wealthier. They get to buy assets that decrease value. Then they get to hold on to that and then come in and buy back into the stock. And China hopefully pops, and then you declare victory. And if that doesn't happen, then what you have is in 6 or 7 months, or however long they, make this thing happen, the arrows start to go up. And then as you head into midterms next year, you have people feeling good, and they vote for the guy who's put more money in their pocket, forgetting that he was the guy that took the money out of their pocket. But, we're a simple group of humans. That's basically the long-term plan. Like, it's not hard. You want to stay in power and you want the people who backed you to make more money. How do I do that? I can make the economy better, or I can tell you go to stables, make the economy worse, and then you can do the old game of reinvesting back into a depressed market. Done.
Fun.
Tying it all together this morning because he invoked Clemente. Clemente dealt bad this morning, not because of his Warren Buffett take, but rather the latest airdrop that the Wayfinder prompt TGE was this morning. Claims are live. Kaido yappers expecting a big chunk of that. I think it was 0.5% of the total supply, and they threw a curveball. Yeah, 0.5% of the total supply going to yappers. Big curveball this morning at TGE. Only emerging yappers qualified. So anyone with more than 90 yaps, no prompt from Kaido. I know you had some choice thoughts on Kaido, and you didn't get to expand on those after your thread the other day and what you discovered in that. But I'm betting some of those in your comments that were heavily that also had a lot of other comments. They're probably some of those that were these quote unquote emerging yappers that have less than 90 yaps, and they printed on this prompt airdrop because it was a big chunk of supply and it went to a very small amount of yappers.
Yeah, people are motivated by money, and I get it. And like everybody has bag bias, myself included, you included. There's always, things that are relevant. And that's like, and one of the things that probably costs us sponsors at times, in fact, I know it has, is that we're not afraid to, like, somebody said to me, like, oh, don't be sad you're not getting yap Steve to my thing, as if like my entire motivation for a well thought out thread about the product market fit of a marketing tool that's claiming to be InfoFi and SocialFi was about me not getting paid. And I was like, I did pretty well on my Kaido airdrop. I just, don't believe in the product and I let money do it. And they're like, money drive it. It's like, prove it. I'm like, I talk shit about the ApeCoin DAO when we had a proposal up in the ApeCoin DAO, and yet it still got passed. But it was like I wasn't gonna like lie about my feelings about things. And I have this thing where it's like people like keep getting in my mentions about the Kaido thing, where I was like, and again, I don't want to like re-go into it too hard because I think a lot of the people are motivated because they're in the Kaido community and they're defending the wall, and I get it. But I kind of basically said, I mean, the TLDR is it's a marketing tool. KOLs will talk about products until they get an airdrop, and then they'll stop after TGE. Like, I'll be curious how many of these people who absolutely love Wayfinder and absolutely think Wayfinder is the best thing are going to talk about it after today. Like, I'm guessing that volume goes down. That's fine. It's an incentivization plan. It is getting you, I think it's worth the 6 figures companies pay to do it, but it's like you're paying for people to talk about your brand. It's fine. It flips a traditional model on its head. My complaints were, 1, it manipulates the conversation on the timeline because creators are getting paid to do undisclosed ads. 2, it blurs the line between organic and sponsored content. And 3, it means that their data's dirty. They don't have clean data necessarily. Like I said, it's hard to see that. Like, I don't know that for a fact. And it's funny, like somebody responded, and like a lot of the responses I get are like, they're sort of like, again, they're like, oh, like one of the people responded this morning saying, sponsored and organic content has always been a social media problem. You can't blame Kaido. I'm like, you are using a fallacious argument. Like, nobody's sitting there being like, hey, yeah, people are shoplifting, but at least it's not armed robbery. That's good. And like, I struggle with that. Like, with some of the pushback that I got on it, where, people were trying to, it's fine. The Kaido's got a lot of time to change their product market fit. They've got a lot of time but they're printing as a cash cow, asking companies for large sums of money to have a leaderboard. And those companies are seeing incredible impressions and attention. And some of those people they're going to retain. It's probably better than some of the other campaigns they would do. And like a couple people were saying to me like, oh, well, 100K there spent is far better than 100K spent here. No shit. That's what I said in the tweet. That's my whole point. It's a good spend of money. It's a good marketing tool. It is not SocialFi. It is likely not InfoFi, although I will give it the benefit of the doubt that they could potentially get there. But it's funny watching a lot of like the responses there. And then I did see some people, I wasn't going to say it, but I'll just say it. I did see some people who replied and had perspectives on that. And they would have like 170 views on a tweet and like 20 replies that were like all calling them like great leader. And you're going to like, I'm like, oh, so you're botting Kaido and trying to beat the system. Got it. So the Kaido defender is kind of making my point for me to a point. I had one person who like vehemently argued.
That's allegedly taking into account into their formulas, but I don't know.
Yeah, so again,
if they bought and get paid for it, they're probably going to continue to bot. If they bought and don't get paid for it, they're probably going to stop botting. That's how I deduce that it probably is working to some degree.
Yeah, it has, and that's fine. Like people want to like pay to boost posts. People want to do. Like, I'm not knocking the hustle. I said that as much. Like I try my best where I can. I'm not perfect. I am a like nerdy person who likes product design to a fault, and I like markets, and I like human behavior, and I try to observe it and talk about it. Like I talked about Pirate Nation. We reached out to Pirate Nation about a potential like partnership a while ago. It didn't change the fact that I went on a rant about the fact that like, and again, I like them. I was complimentary and being honest, but it didn't change the fact that I had a different perspective on how I didn't like the perspective on how they did their recent TGE. I think that they did a poor job and they're looking into how they can fix it. But yeah, the Kaido thing is a whole nother conversation where it's like, I wonder how many of those people who are talking about how Kaido is the next great thing and we're talking about how awesome Wayfinder is, how happy are those people going to be who are like, I see some of them online, even friends of mine, so I could poke fun at them, but like, they're almost, the gif of the smiling, or the meme of there's a smiling face mask and person's crying behind it. That's what I see with some of the big Kaido people who are like, it's so great to see these airdrops for emerging yappers. It's like, do you really feel that way? I'll be interested. And like, again, marketing tool, great, awesome. But it's interesting to see the pushback I'm getting and seeing how the pushback has come. Some of it very valid, and I need to do more research on. Some of it I think is bullshit. And I think that that's fine. And it's fine to have both ends of it. And I want to have intelligent discourse, but I also think like some people try to discredit perspectives in a weird, like somebody even said like pretty bold claim to say the data's not clean. I said, I'm not sure the data's not clean, but it's an equally bold counterpoint to say I made a bold claim with no actual proof behind it. Like you basically just took the side of it. I gave data to support why I believe it. You gave the other point and didn't provide any data. Like that doesn't strengthen your argument, that weakens it. But that's part of the discussion point that you have on X sometimes. That's part of the discourse. So I don't know. That's my thoughts on Kaido. But Joe, I saw your hand fly up on this one. Go ahead and get in here.
I had no Kaido thoughts because it's just another farm. But I was on here and we talked about Nike. So I went and I looked at my 95, 96, 97 Air Maxes, which I actually bought in 95, 96, and 97 because yes, I am in my 40s.
So you got a real price on them. You didn't pay secondary and get them for a huge.
No, buddy. Like I bought my fucking 95s and 95s. So much music label money went to that Nike town, but they were all made in Korea, South Korea, which is really interesting if you think about the timeline on that, because 30 years ago, South Korea was an emerging market, and Nike found that it for costs in South Korea, so it was making its Air Max in Korea. It doesn't even say South Korea; it says Korea, but now you would never think of buying a pair of Nikes and having them probably made in South Korea because it is a tech and innovation hub and the labor force is much too skilled and well paid to work in a shoe factory for Nike. So that's how long it takes to transition an emerging market where it's no longer valid for the people to make $3 a week or a day or whatever making shoes. I will also say that I took a plane to Korea, which was the first time I left to go to Asia, to specifically buy one of these pairs of shoes because at the time there wasn't internet to go and get limited edition Japanese black, silver, green 97 Air Max. And the last thing on that and Nike is that Phil Knight is trying to buy a casino in Vegas because he wants to build an arena on it so he can get the Vegas expansion team. And if he gets that done, LeBron will be a minority owner of it when he retires. I'm done talking.
There's two things in there that are like, one, I think fair points. I think
sorry to interrupt. Breaking news. If you're claiming prompt, do not claim it right now. There's sorry for the interruption. I'll go right back to you. I just saw this and I'm going to take it at face value. I don't think it's made up based on the poster and the commenters, but apparently there's an MEV frontrunner that is stealing and swapping all the prompt Kaido claims for ETH. So if you go to do your Kaido, or if you go to claim your prompt, this MEV frontrunner will steal your prompt and swap it for ETH. So wait until they fix it. Apparently there's some bug in the claim Your wallet is safe, but you will not get your prompt is the word. It's everyone's tagging Kaido, but it looks like this MEV frontrunner has already made about 200K so far stealing the prompt claims. Back to you, Steve.
No, actually, that's there's probably a good analogy to be had there about the Pirate
Good
Nation.
thing I had zero. Good thing I'm not an emerging yapper. Good thing I've got just enough yaps to not be in the category, but not enough yaps to actually get paid anything and get zero prompts. So I'm booking wins today, Steve. Zero prompt for me. The MEV frontrunner got none of mine.
Yeah, no, like I'll quickly hit on the 2 points. Like I think like Joe's 2 points and like the point he was making related to the other conversation. I'll actually flip it on its head to say further agreement on why one of the reasons I didn't like tariffs is like initially is like people talked about we need to bring manufacturing jobs back to the US. Like equally hard to transition back in time from a tech to a manufacturing country with number one.
Forbes just said it will cost on average somewhere between $30,000 to $100,000 to manufacture a single iPhone in the US. I call people on that, knowing a little bit about how these things are put together, but pretty staggering number there, if even remotely accurate.
But yeah, we have these conversations where people are like, why not bring it all back? And they act like it's very, like, we got into very complex details of like global, like geopolitics and global economics, which I actually love. Like, I enjoy those conversations because I get more educated. The amount of like, but the amount of people who are like, let's just bring manufacturing to the US, obviously, which I'm not knocking those people. It sounds good on paper. And that's what the president's saying effectively is like, we're going to bring these, like, he had that whole thing. He's like, these guys want to mine coal. They don't want to live in a penthouse on Fifth Avenue. I'm like, beg to differ, but sure. But like, it's hard to go with the reverse as well. And so one of the reasons why I didn't like the strategy is like, what we do as a country is not manufacture those things. And there's reasons why it's hard to put the genie back in the bottle there. The other thing is you talk about throwback shoes. True story. I had like a pair of like the like OG LeBron shoes because, obviously I like LeBron. I'm from Cleveland, all those things. I bought the OG LeBron shoes. I wore them to play basketball because they're basketball shoes. They're worth a lot more money now. I probably should have kept them in the box, but I'm an idiot who like wore my shoes around. Meanwhile, I've bought a bunch of NFT shoes I haven't worn that are worth, the price of less than the box that they're in right now. So lessons there on collectibles, I suppose.
I got on an airplane and flew 14 hours to buy a pair of shoes. And then I flew 14 hours back with those pair of shoes. That's next level dumb fuckery. Of course, I was, like 17 and, fuck around and find out, right? I would say on the Forbes thing, that feels like what they did was they figured out how much it would cost to move, set up, train, do all the stuff that you got to do. And then that would be the price of the first iPhone or the first year of iPhones. Obviously, once you start making years of iPhones in the factory with the same labor force, blah, 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 the price is going to come down. But the first iPhone that comes off the first American iPhone line is going to cost, a lot. So that's what I assume they did. And it's a better headline than, can you imagine the price of the first year of iPhones would cost this much, right? Because the very first iPhone cost what, $500 million to develop?
Yeah.
To say the very first iPhone cost $500 million. Since then, they've done all right, though.
It makes for a splashy headline for sure, though. The Payne said your first mistake was wearing LeBron's to hoop in. Once again, I actually thank you, Payne. Payne feels that LeBron is the GOAT of GOATs, and I can't argue with him because he's right. I shouldn't have worn them. I should have kept him in the box. Just like yesterday, he made a similar point in the war room. So I got to credit Payne. He keeps me honest about LeBron being the greatest, and I appreciate him pounding the table on that and making sure I understand. I shouldn't have worn those shoes to hoop in. I gotta wear them I gotta keep them in the box so that I don't wear them around. So good call, Payne. Just like yesterday in the war room about LeBron being as good as they come. I think I love Payne is. I am just a master with this, and we'll do it all day. And Payne knows. I think his response yesterday when I said it is, "I hate you sometimes." Let's actually want to talk as I know we have about 10.
We do need to get a market update in at some point, just FYI.
Let's actually do that. Yeah, good call. Let's do market update. I'll hit the media assets on that, and then we can. I think actually your point about this airdrop, actually there is a transition into the Pirate Nation piece.
It's market update time. Let's set the play. Powered by Wayfinder, the smart tax way. From crypto flips to DeFi stacks. They keep it clean. Got your back. Grab your coffee. Let's break it down. Daily update right now.
And it's time for the Daily Market Update, brought to you by Awaken, the best way to handle your crypto taxes with integrations across top exchanges and blockchains, plus AI-powered transaction labeling. Awaken makes tax season easy. From NFTs to DeFi to meme coins, Awaken has you covered. Get $50 off with code COFFEE at awaken.tax. That's $50 off when you use code COFFEE at AWAKEN.TAX. And again, we are less than a week out from tax season. Whether you're filing an extension or not, or whether you just want to track transactions throughout, just get your taxes done, kids. We were talking to Natty Wife yesterday. She signed up for it. She's a friend and a community member. She's crushing it. So we'll get to that update, but make sure you sign up and use code COFFEE. It's $53 for you to get off there and help you ultimately do your taxes right. Don't get caught with a bad tax bill, kids. I have done that. It is bad. Cap.
Starting off on a different chart today, Steve, fear and greed remains undefeated. I actually made that up. I don't know if it remains entirely undefeated, but the last few times it's bottomed out. It has been the time to buy. CoinMarketCap's fear and greed shows a low of 15. I saw some screenshots floating around with a fear and greed of 3 yesterday before the tariff pause was announced and sent markets running. Speaking of those markets, we have a green day across the board. We've got Bitcoin up 4.5% to 81,000. ETH up 5.5%, leading the charge to 1572. XRP up 9.17%, just under $2. BNB up 2.5%. Solana up 6.45% to 112. Doge up 5.3. Tron up 4.2. Cardano up 7.71. These numbers are actually down a little bit from when we started the show. We had CPI come in below expectations this morning. It did not send markets flying as normally expected, but this is also coming off of a record day. I think it was the biggest move ever yesterday for the S&P and the NASDAQ. I may have that information wrong as well, but nevertheless, a big day regardless. And same thing in the NFT land. Even with ETH ripping up, we've got Mutinates up 4% to 2.44, Pudgies up 4% to 9.29, Apes up 1.45% to over 14. No idea what Chubbit official is. If anyone's aware, let us know in the chat. Steady Teddies continued their positive, both continue to see volume and a 1.91% increase in that floor price, 1.59 Barra. I believe Barra's up on the day as well. Taproot Wizards, 0.15 Bitcoin, up 11% on the day. Little Pudgies, 3.4% up to 1.10. Azuki's up 4% to 2.56. Doodles up 4% to 2.80. And Ordinal Maxi Biz up 6.15% to 0.0259 BTC. I think this is the first day since we've been doing the daily market update that the top 10 in both coins and in NFTs were all green, 100% green across the board. I don't think we've seen that for a while. I singled out Fartcoin yesterday, right around here. If you bought it up, as I shared in the war room, you'll be up about 87,000% if you bought the Coffee with Captain pub. Yeah, we mentioned it right about here on Coffee with Captain. I kid, it wasn't exactly that time, but it was in the 50s when we looked at it yesterday on the show. And I said it was the meme winner of the cycle. It did not disappoint yesterday. Up 25% on the day, still 24% on the day still. It peaked out at or almost 80 cents. Is giving up some of that a little bit today as most have pulled back a little bit following the CPI print this morning. But Steve, that's our daily market update today. Actually, while I'm here, I was going to check a couple of others. I want to check Barra, and then you might have to give me the, so yeah, up 10% on the day as well, 385. And then Pirate Nation, is Pirate or Booty?
Pirate
Nation still up on the day despite the can I say, is it fair to say mixed reviews from the community, mostly bearish?
Mixed would be very kind.
So kind of, speaking of TGEs and some surprises, I think we're going to land at the same thing. I think the Kaido TGE, where they rewarded their emerging yappers with that prompt claim today, probably is received a lot better if it was communicated in advance, although maybe that leads to some funny business. I think probably I'm going to guess similar with Pirate Nation. If it's communicated more in advance, probably not the pushback that it was met with yesterday. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair. To give the quick on that, I know we're hitting 10 o'clock. We probably go, 5-7 minutes on this one, though, because I think it's worth discussing. And maybe we kick it in tomorrow because I know it's Friday. We may have a guest tomorrow. I mentioned not the one you think. This is why people might have been someone in the war room, I think, was hesitate by our
I
discussion
saw the
too.
invite. I still don't even know if I remember who or what it is.
It's a Telegram chat you're in now. So it's like, that was why it was funny when you're like, is it related to, our guest Friday? I'm like, maybe not the one you because I think someone in the war room actually got taken off by that and asked me a question about it. I'm like, no, it's not the guest you think it is. But the Pirate Nation reward. So basically, Pirate Nation, if you're not familiar, it's one of my favorite games. I enjoy playing it. My kids enjoy playing it. I like the game. It's a well-designed game by well-designed game designers who did things like, it had people who had worked at previously at, who basically invented Farmville, people who worked at Zynga. The creator of Farmville is the CEO, worked at Zynga. People who had worked at like Square and other financial spots. And the previous two TGs you claim, but they'd given you really compelling reasons to use the token. And me as a player, I used it to buy a VIP pass. I used it to buy gems, which helped me play longer. TLDR, and I'll be curious if you think I'm, over the top on this one, Cap, is that they basically did their TGE. You could only claim 10% of the reward. So I think mine was like $600. It wasn't huge because I just casually play the game. It's sort of like something I'm doing anyway. And so I was able to claim about $60 of that. But then the other 90% would be burned. Or I could let it vest after 180 days. So you're talking about 6 months. And then I could earn proof of play points. Not sure what those are. Maybe another airdrop related to all of their products. And claiming would burn your unvested token. I basically said it bums me out, and I'll give like a sort of an overview on it, that the team had previously created organic in-game focused sinks for the token. I actively spent my pirate in-game. By contrast, this is forced inorganic mechanism to pump the token. The team emphasized building a great game or product over the token price. Maybe a VC or the market made people take a different approach. It came out of nowhere, zero communication. And in fact, players that didn't have Founders Pirates, which are their Genesis NFTs, had to buy a $20 VIP membership in order to make the claim. And then they're not able to make the whole claim. And so I said, like, don't get me wrong, like, they build really cool products. I really like the team. One bad decision doesn't make this, but I think this is a major miss, especially without communications. Now, to be fair, I put an update. It looks like their CEO said, hey, all reading and digesting all the transparent constructive feedback, going to go discuss internally with Foundation how to proceed and adjust moving forward. I don't like this at all. Like, this is like you drop a vesting schedule out of nowhere. And by the way, they used a word salad. They said to better align incentives with the community and our token or something. It's like, that's not a real explanation. And then in the Discord, as people were going nuts, there actually wasn't anybody really in there answering questions, which I also don't love. If you're going to put out an announcement like this, I realize you want to let people vent. And I don't know, Starbucks put out announcements they didn't like when I was a community lead. I had to be a punching bag. That was part of my job, is to answer questions and try to calm people. And so I just didn't think it was handled well. I like proof of play. I like the team. How would you react if you were expecting an airdrop that for some people was a 6-figure airdrop, for some was 5, for some was 4, for some was a couple $100? How would you react if you were getting, say, let's call it a 4-figure airdrop, 5-figure airdrop, and they told you can claim 10%, the rest will be burned, or you can claim the rest in 180 days. Who knows what happens between now and then?
My first gut reaction is to say I would stop playing the game.
That's what a lot of people did, by the way.
Or it just, I deprioritize it significantly. Like, I may still dabble, I may still play, I may still attempt to qualify, do the bare minimum so I can still get whatever I had coming to me. But I'm not spending another dime. I'd stop putting any extra in, and that would probably be my maybe not. Maybe I change my mind after a little bit and forget about it, move on. But most likely, I would either stop entirely or drastically reduce the amount of time I was putting into it.
Well, and people did spend real money on this, right? They spent money on VIP, they spend money in the game, all these different things.
It's pretty messed up to do it after the fact. Like, fine, you want to make the change for next season? Cool, do that. And then people know going into the season that I'm going to spend all this money to upgrade and everything, but there's a much greater chance I don't get it all back in an airdrop, because, not just their chart, all charts have been going like this. And if I have to lock that stuff up for 6 months, there's a much greater chance I sell it down here as opposed to up here.
Yeah. And I think also, like, I always say this, and I said this with the Moonbird CC0.
Good chart, good charting, good TA.
Yeah, that's technical analysis, the red lean. I said this with when Moonbirds, before they kind of all went down and everything happened, when Moonbirds did CC0, it wasn't even about the announcement. It's about the loss of trust. And I think a lot of people lost trust in a really good team that has been incredibly good with updates, that has been incredibly good with helping people, continue to, like they've been incredibly smart, helpful, all those things, incredibly communicative. When you don't communicate this and you drop it and you don't have a choice, like that's rough. And I think with Moonbirds with CC0, my issue was you do a whatever the fuck they called the nesting, like the meetings that they did every week. I forget what it was, but they did like meetings every week with the community and never mentioned it once. They're like, surprise, CC0 motherfuckers. And everybody lost trust on them. And that was the beginning of the end. And I don't think it's the beginning and end. Proof of Play is a great product. They have a great B2B product. Again, maybe the investors are like, you can't just let us get our token dumped in this market. And that's what happened. But to give no explanation in the announcement and to give no prior heads up on it, you lose trust with the community. And I'm sure gameplay is down. It's sort of like, and again, we talked about this with Ethos a couple weeks ago. Like, this is one of those things where it's like, I am a communications professional by trade, and my background ultimately went into marketing, more so in a broader scale. But like, I'm a communications professional by trade. I don't understand why this community of Web3 doesn't value communications to its customers. I don't. It's community, it's customers, it's people that use their products. I don't get it. Like, Ethos was another example where we talked to him and, Serpent was like, and again, I loved having Serpent on the show. Serpent was like, I don't get it. We put out a really good product. It's really awesome. What's going on here? And it's like, but you didn't communicate beforehand. You're making these major changes to people's credibility score. It's like, you said it kind of in a minor Discord announcement at one point. That's the part that I struggle with a little bit here is like, why would you not communicate this up front? Why do Moonbirds not communicate CC0? Why did Ethos not? And Ethos, we heard an answer from Serpent. He's like, next time we'll be better about it. They're learning. He's great. I love the way he thinks about it and the fact that he's trying to build a real product. That's actually the difference to me, by the way, between Serpent and Kaido founders.
Well, shout out to the Kaido founders, or shout out to Achilles rather. He tagged Punk, I don't remember the number, but the Kaido founder, and said, hey, this is the best open, honest, transparent conversation you can find on X. He invited him on the show. I said, we'd love to have him on so he can answer to the feedback we're giving him.
Yeah. And we're happy to like have that conversation. I mean, we got feedback on the Serpent interview where people were like, you asked him every tough question. You didn't give him off the hook, but you let him answer the questions honestly. And he gave us a very honest take where he's like, yeah, I would do things differently. And here's how. Here's why I did it. Here's why it actually worked. Here's why it didn't work. And I think that one made a lot of sense. Serpent was honest about that. We never got a straight answer from K-Row on the thing. And with the Pirate Nation team, like, I guess I want to know, like, why didn't you communicate and why did you make this decision?
And I know I also want to acknowledge it's far easier for us to sit here and try to Monday morning armchair quarterback after the fact. However, if we could rewind and you were advising the team, what's the risk of communicating this early? People are going to stop playing in advance? Like, you get a couple extra days of gameplay is like the worst case scenario. But maybe you keep the trust with some of those that you now lost, right? Like, what is the downside of communicating this weeks ago or months ago?
Well, unless there was so the downside on a very real level, which somebody brought up to me, was they brought up the idea of like, look, like, is there SEC regulations or things that, and I say like, look, SEC is more favorable right now. They're not doing things, but there is a very real conversation if they're like, we couldn't, like, right? And so if that is the reasoning, I don't want them to use it as a shield, and I hope they don't if it's not true. I am not a legal or regulatory expert.
You know what? You brought up a very good point because it could have been one attorney. Their general counsel said you can't communicate anything about this until it actually is claimable, and they said, okay, we'll take your advice. And that there could be nothing more to it than that. They were advised not to share any updates until the thing was live.
Yeah, and I think that would have been a good response if that were the real reasoning. I haven't seen that anywhere from anybody other than people trying to find reasons to give them a pass on it, which is fair, and it might be the reason. And if it is, understand, right? Like, I think that would be reasonable. I still don't agree with it. The reputational downsides are honestly like, yeah, people might have stopped playing the game before TGE. People might have like come out about why they didn't like it. And then they would have had to have a little debate and discussion and actually kind of disclose some reasons and give it beforehand. And maybe you don't want to go down that rabbit hole. I am a fan of say what you're going to do, talk about it. Like, one of the reasons Abstract and Pudgy Penguins do so well is Luca goes to an inner igloo and talks to them every single week and talks about directionally where they're going and what they're doing. There aren't surprises outside of good ones of like, we got another deal with Walmart. We got a deal with Target. We're doing Lil Pudgy toys and you can apply. Like, I just don't understand why teams in general are so, and this isn't the Pirate Nation team to single them out. It's like teams just do such a poor job with communications on the whole. And it's like, but they don't value it enough, right? Like if I go out and I say, I want to do communications consulting, who's interested from a project perspective? I don't think any of them are going to take me up on it. But at the same time, it seems as though everybody could use help there, right? Everybody thinks they're a communicator. It's like everybody thinks they're a marketer and communicator. Just like, but if I was like, hey, you know what? I'm just going to go dev things. I'm going to vibe code it. Like, I'm probably not going to be as good as a traditional dev. Maybe I could try to slap it together, but I'm probably not going to be as good as a traditional dev. And I think there's still such a value in that skill set of understanding humans and how they think and what they're going to react. And I think, you know, I've worked with companies who have given advice to, and they haven't listened, and it hasn't worked out because they don't have a taste on it, but they think, I know how this is going to work better than you do. And yes, you've done this your whole career. Yes, you're a communicator. So yeah, the downsides, if there's a legal and regulatory one, I get it. Still, I would like to hear that. But I don't understand the reasoning behind the decision. Before that, like forget legal and regulatory. I don't understand the 180-day vesting versus that outside of like, hey, we want token to pump. But yeah, the communications thing in this space is baffling to me. And I hope they put a priority on it following this issue. Just like it sounds like Serpent and team are going to try to put a priority in it following their sort of score drop FUD that they got. But man, it is wacky to me how many companies don't just want to say like, hey, maybe Chris Voigt juggle Chris Voigt, by the way, in the comments, VFriends does an amazing job communicating all updates on the project. Yes, VFriends is a classic example, but you know what? That's a skill set their CEO in Andy, their founder in Gary has.
This is actually perfect. I kid you not. I'll see if I can find it. Probably can't. Actually, I will. It might take me a minute though. We may wrap the show before then. They do that as good or not better than anyone else in the space. And yet even still, there's individuals in this space that thought Gary has checked out of NFTs and wasn't.
Oh, I saw that one.
It was questioning, well, how in the hell does VFriend still have a floor above 1 ETH? And Gary stopped, doesn't even care about NFTs anymore. Like why this doesn't make any sense. Long story short, the individual got flooded with VFriend's community members and Gary himself. And I think he ended up going and buying a VFriend or he bought like some packs or something, like went from a fudder to a community member in 24 hours. But my point is someone who's world renowned for ability to communicate on social media, arguably doing it as good or better than anyone in the space, and still had people active in this space that thought he had quit on NFTs. It's hard. It's hard. It's hard for everyone to see what you're communicating. If you don't communicate, people, it's going to get even worse. Like people are upset thinking you're doing something that you're not. So if you choose not to communicate, know that some of the people are going to think that you're doing things that you're not even doing.
Well, let me even build on that. To your point, that point is actually salient. And then you would build on that to say, one, what happened? Gary himself responded. Communications. Two, the entire VFriends community responded. Why? Because they've communicated with them so well that they have these ambassadors. So like to your point, like to build on your point, you're exactly right. Number one, even the best communications channels in the world, people are going to miss stuff, right? Even if you're the best at it. And like, because when I say I've missed something and then I get a flood of things, I realize I am in the wrong for not having known that, just like this person did, right? They said, hey, my bad. I need to do more research. But two, to your point, because they've communicated so well to their community, they were able to get out and respond. And because Gary himself went and responded, he just basically said, hey, we've been very active really quickly. And then everybody else said, boom, 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 boom. So to your point about like Gary's communication skills, like they do it as well or better than anyone in the space. And the result is, this is why, like, that's actually, I'm glad you brought that up because that's a textbook example of why communications and PR are important. People are like, why are we trying to get all these positive news stories right now on Progressive Insurance? Because when we have a bad claim that goes viral, we have a bunch of good shit that shows up in SEO with the bad shit because we've communicated so well. And the reporter we call up gives us the benefit of the doubt to say, wait a minute, no, they're really good. One of the reasons I gave Pirate Nation somewhat of a benefit of the doubt when I finished my thread was because they've been good about it, because I have felt how well they built products and games. And so I kind of said at the end, hey, still proud to be a Pirate, and I hope, still love the team. That benefit of the doubt you get only exists if you build the credibility up front. Why did Good Vibes Club sell out in the Floor Cook? Because they communicated early. They spent the time and effort having those conversations. These things are important, and teams in general seem to sort of put them to the side. And the VFriends example, if you find that, send it to me because I may do a thread on that as a comms professional of why it's important. So I don't know. It's been interesting to see that over the past 24 hours and just think about like, I still wonder if there's like a calling for me to try to like ask these teams if they need comms help sometimes, because there is a complete lack of ability to do it. They have to listen, but like a lack of ability to do it effectively. So I don't know.
I mean, I'm not trying to take shots at anyone. Again, I realize it is much easier to armchair quarterback than be the actual quarterback. But some of this stuff is like table stakes, man. Some of this is just the lowest hanging fruit from a I'm not a communications like background, but I have it like it's what I've done my entire life. Like I've not done it in the corporate environment for Fortune 500s like Steve has, but I've ran a few businesses and I just can't fathom sometimes how little time, attention, and resources that some of these crypto native brands put towards PR and comms, where it is even in like small startup businesses that that they've got a CEO founder and then frontline retail employee. They put more time, thought, and attention into communications than does some of these, multi-million-dollar protocols here. It's like, it really blows my mind every time I see such a, like, this is the easy stuff, right? Like some of the technical stuff, by the way, it does appear that I get it. They're an AI company, but it appears that Wayfinder used AI to write their smart contract for the claim. And that's what led to this MEV issue. So rip to all the prompt claimers that got 0 after thinking they had a big bag. Like those merging yappers down bad. And I don't feel bad for them, Steve.
No, I mean, like, I understand.
I'm kidding,
like,
I do feel bad, but
yeah, I was going to say, it's just,
I'm over it already.
Quit had a tweet that said like 2025 and still large projects are YOLOing to product with no audit. I get AI can help you build, but it only makes an audit more important. This is my point. Like, I just, there was a response where Beast had like somebody vibe coded their way to a Mevbot or something. This is my point though. It's like, I just don't understand why people think it's not important to consult professionals, not important to audit, not important to do comms. Like, and again, like you mentioned comms being the easy part. Comms is the hard part for certain groups. I'm doing a space with On-Chain Monkey today. One of the reasons they bring me in is because I help them communicate their message. They bring me in to host spaces and help distill, someone as brilliant as Danny Yang is not naturally going to communicate on a space. And we talked about it before, where like he'll sometimes get really technical. And so you bring on a communicator and he recognizes that. I could never code like Danny Yang. I could never think the way he thinks or do the things he does. What I can do is understand it and translate it for an audience. And that way everybody in between can understand it. Even like the tariffs discussion this morning, Joe brought up some really awesome points. I wanted to make sure that everybody understood sort of like all the individual like pillar points that were being made, because there's a really good discussion on both sides. Like that's something that inherently I am naturally drawn to, is translating and communicating so that whether it's my 8-year-old niece or my 80-year-old grandmother, anyone can understand. I got to stop using that analogy because my mom is 70 at this point. But the point being, like, I just think that communications, like marketing communications, are different disciplines. You want to go do paid marketing or advertising? Great. Advertising is me telling you I'm awesome. PR is someone else telling you I'm awesome, right? And so I think that those things are so important. And again, it's not beating up on Pirate Nation. Like you said, it's harder when you're the man in the arena and you have other things going on. But I mean, Doodles didn't communicate for a month and they came back and they said, so from learning from this, are you going to start communicating? And Jordan Poopy, he goes, we have some other things we got to hire first, like some dev work that are higher priorities. Like people just don't take it seriously. And it leads to things like this. And like Moonbirds lost the plot and it became an issue. Kaido lost a lot of users and activity and became an issue. Pirate Nation is losing players and it became an issue. And if you had communicated up front, people like Pirate Murdoch, who has a great following, people like myself would have talked about the reasonings and the logic behind it. At least seed some of that. I don't know, like even somebody like I had a conversation with a Pudgy Penguin high-ranking team member at one point, and they made the point of like never waste a good announcement. They do PR. And I was talking to them and I was like low-hanging fruit, and the person responded to me, they're like, it's low-hanging fruit. And they talked about another team who I'm not going to mention in the space who had a big announcement that didn't do it, move anything, didn't move price, didn't move sentiment. And the leader was like, look, like they just didn't do PR. They didn't maximize it. And I just don't understand why teams don't see this as important. I mean, who did a good job of it? Like we had some critiques about some things with their fees. Magic Eden was everywhere yesterday. They had their team ready to go. They had their CEO ready to go. They had partners ready to go. They had their acquisition company ready to go. They had public relations ready to launch on multiple sites. Fortune had it. They got they do a good job on communications. Say what you will, like, hate, whatever their product is. I think they build a good product in a lot of various ways. I don't love the fees. They communicate very well. They don't need someone like me to come in and do it unless they want somebody to sort of steer the ship. Other companies do need communicators, and that is just the miss that I just don't understand. I don't know. Maybe this is what I should be doing in my spare time with some of these companies, because it's mind-boggling.
Yeah. If you need help, reach out. We may not have the answers, but we'll at least give you our thoughts. Couple real quick cleanups. First of all, big shout out to Rare Ed, Trippy Laser, and Ace Eye Tuna. Big tip wars over in the abstract chat. Be Epic coming in over the top with a big 444 Pingu. Appreciate you all over there making the Pingu abstract global wallet go burr. The other news, well, you mentioned it kind of in passing, but the Magic Eden acquisition, I almost called it Slipknot. That's not it. Slingshot. Is that right?
Slipknot. That's amazing.
Slingshot.
You right? Slipknot. Are you like you're like oh. I don't remember. Is it called Slipknot? They acquired Insane Clown Posse.
I couldn't tell you one Slipknot song or Insane Clown Posse song, but here we are. I think that was about it for the day, though. Big day tomorrow to wrap up the week. The very volatile week that has been not just crypto, but the trading worlds at large. I do think, no worries, confused idiot in the X chat was having some issues with the app. I think X was being buggy there for a minute. We almost in an instant, we lost a bunch of listeners, and now it's coming back up. So I don't know for sure. My X didn't crash, but it appears based on just activity, it looks like X might have went down for several people, but seems to be back up and working now. All that though, I think, I think we hit it today. I think good conversation for sure when you joined the conversation. And I am mostly hopeful, Steve, that we can, next week we're talking about, victory laps on big Masters wins, more MLB printing, and we distance ourselves from the tariffs conversation, but I get it. It is what it is. It's very much part of all the markets right now. And us not talking about it's not going to make it go away. So appreciate everyone who added to the combo.
Yeah, absolutely. That said, let's let everyone sail off another day. Good discussion today. I love these sort of things where we have some good pushes around, things, Chris, Mackie, Joe, all the different speakers we had today talking about what what their areas of expertise are to help us, ultimately get to the bottom of some of these discussions, because they are hard. So I think it's a good way for me to get more educated and detailed. I left today. The reason why I like this, I left today smarter than I started. I'm leaving the space today. I should say, the reason I like these sort of shows is I'm leaving the show today smarter than when I came in. We had people come in who gave us really good perspectives across a multitude of disciplines, which help us understand all the nuances to things like the trade war, like the tariffs, like everything else that's going on. So thanks to everyone who came up to help make me smarter today. It helps me going forward as I continue to have these discussions and understand the world as it is. So thanks to everybody who came through today. We will talk to everybody bright and early tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Eastern time. Have a wonderful, wonderful day, everybody.
Thanks for tuning into Coffee with Captain, powered by ApeCoin. We hope you enjoyed the show, and remember, nothing we discussed today is financial advice. Until next time, keep exploring, stay curious, and we'll see you soon. Have a great day.
Welcome to the future.